When love becomes a prison, one woman's desperate escape. The rain hammered against the pavement as Elena Voss stumbled through the darkened streets, her ribs screaming with every breath. Blood trickled from her split lip, mixing with tears she no longer had the strength to wipe away. Behind her, somewhere in the city's maze of lights and shadows, Marcus was searching. He always found her. Always. But tonight would be different. Tonight, she would disappear into the one place his arrogance would never let him look. A world of luxury he believed she could never afford, never deserve. If you want to see how Elena's story unfolds, stay until the very end. Like this video and comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The lobby of the Meridian Grand was a cathedral of marble and gold, its vaulted ceilings stretching upward into shadows that seemed to swallow the chandelier's light. Elena stood just inside the revolving doors, water pooling beneath her feet, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. She didn't belong here. Every pristine surface, every hushed conversation, every glance from the impeccably dressed guests told her so. But she had nowhere else to go. Her reflection in the polished floor showed a woman she barely recognized. Hair plastered to her skull, mascara streaked down hollow cheeks, a purple bruise blooming across her left cheekbone. The designer dress she'd worn to what was supposed to be a romantic dinner was torn at the shoulder, revealing the mottled evidence of Marcus's grip. Just book a room. Just get behind a locked door. Elena's fingers trembled as she clutched her purse, a small leather bag containing $300 in cash, her driver's license, and a cracked iPhone she'd powered off 2 hours ago. Everything else was back at the apartment. Their apartment. His apartment. The thought of what she'd left behind threatened to paralyze her. Her clothes, her laptop, the few photographs of her mother she'd managed to keep after the funeral, but none of it mattered. Not anymore. Things could be replaced. Her life couldn't. "May I help you, miss?" The concierge's voice was smooth, professional, but Elena caught the flicker of concern in his eyes as they traveled over her disheveled appearance. He was young, perhaps 30, with dark hair slicked back and a burgundy vest that probably cost more than she used to make in a month. "I need—" Elena's voice cracked. She cleared her throat, forcing steel into her tone. "I need a room. For tonight. Maybe longer." "Of course." His fingers flew across the keyboard, and if he noticed the way her hands shook as she placed her credit card on the marble counter, he was too well trained to show it. "Checking in alone this evening?" The question was innocent, routine, but it made Elena's stomach clench. "Yes, just me." "Wonderful. I have a deluxe queen available on the 14th floor. That would be $450 for the night, and we'll need a card on file for incidentals." $450? The number hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd known the Meridian was expensive, but hearing it aloud made the reality sink in. At this rate, her cash would last 3 days, maybe 4 if she skipped meals. The concierge's expression remained neutral. "It is Fashion Week, miss. Our rates are—" "That's fine." Elena slid the card across the counter before she could second-guess herself. Marcus would never think to look for her somewhere this expensive. He'd always controlled their finances, doled out money like she was a child asking for an allowance. The credit card in her hand was one she'd opened secretly 6 months ago, using her grandmother's address, making minimum payments from tips she'd hidden from the coffee shop job Marcus didn't know she'd kept. It was her escape fund. She'd just never imagined she'd need to use it like this. The keyboard clicking seemed impossibly loud in the hushed lobby. Elena's eyes darted to the revolving doors, half expecting to see Marcus's broad shoulders pushing through, his handsome face twisted with that particular expression that always came before his hands found her throat. "All set, Miss Voss. Room 1447. The elevators are just past the fountain," and the concierge paused, lowering his voice. "Miss, are you quite all right? Should I call someone, a doctor, perhaps?" "I'm fine." The lie came automatically, perfected through 2 years of practice. "Just a long day. The rain, you know." He didn't look convinced, but he handed her the key card anyway, a sleek black rectangle with gold lettering. "Breakfast is served in the pavilion from 6 to 11. If you need anything at all during your stay, please don't hesitate to call the front desk." "Thank you." Elena turned away before he could see the tears threatening to spill over. The elevator bay was exactly where he'd indicated, past a fountain where bronze dolphins leaped eternally upward. She pressed the call button and watched the numbers descend. 22, 21, 20. The ding of the arriving elevator made her jump. "Nervous traveler?" The voice came from behind her, deep, cultured, with an accent she couldn't quite place. British, maybe, or European. Elena turned to find a man standing a few feet away, hands in the pockets of an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her appearance in a single glance. "Excuse me?" "You jumped at the elevator." A faint smile played at the corners of his mouth, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Either you've had a very long day or you're running from something. In my experience, people don't check into the Meridian at midnight in wet clothes, unless it's the latter." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course not." He stepped into the elevator as the doors opened, holding them with one hand while making a small gesture of invitation. "After you." Every instinct screamed at her not to get into a confined space with a strange man. Not tonight, not ever again. But standing in the lobby felt equally dangerous, exposed, visible to anyone who might walk through those revolving doors. Elena stepped into the elevator. The man followed, pressing the button for the penthouse level before glancing at her expectantly. "Your floor?" 14. He pressed the button without comment, and the elevator began its smooth ascent. Elena kept her eyes fixed on the digital display, watching the numbers climb, acutely aware of her reflection in the polished brass, a bedraggled ghost beside this man's crisp elegance. "Adrian Moretti," he said, breaking the silence. "I own the hotel." Of course he did. Elena risked a glance at him, noting the way he stood, perfectly relaxed, yet somehow alert, like a predator comfortable in his territory. "Congratulations." "You're not impressed." "Should I be?" That earned her a genuine smile, brief but transforming. "Most people are. It's refreshing to meet someone who isn't." He tilted his head slightly, studying her with those sharp eyes. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question. "I'm fine." "That bruise on your cheek suggests otherwise. So does the way you're favoring your left side." The elevator chimed for the 14th floor. "My head of security is excellent at her job. Discreet, professional. If you're in some kind of trouble—" "I said, I'm fine." The words came out sharper than Elena intended. The elevator doors opened onto a corridor of muted cream walls and plush carpeting. She stepped out quickly, not looking back. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Moretti. I can take care of myself." "Can you?" The question followed her down the hall, soft but pointed. Elena didn't turn around. She found room 1447, swiped her keycard with shaking hands, and practically fell through the doorway as the lock clicked open. The door closed behind her with a solid, reassuring thunk. She was alone. Elena stood in the darkness, listening to her own ragged breathing, the rain still pounding against the windows somewhere beyond the blackout curtains. Her hand found the light switch, and soft golden illumination flooded the room. It was beautiful. Absurdly, impossibly beautiful. A king-sized bed with crisp white linens, a sitting area with a velvet sofa the color of deep wine. Fresh flowers on the desk, their scent faintly floral. Through an open doorway, she glimpsed marble and chrome, a bathroom larger than her childhood bedroom. The sight of it, the sheer luxury, the safety, the locked door between her and the world, broke something open inside her chest. Elena sank to the floor and wept. She didn't know how long she sat there, back against the door, arms wrapped around her knees. The tears came in waves, each one carrying away a piece of the careful control she'd maintained for so long. She cried for the woman who'd believed Marcus when he said he loved her, for the version of herself who'd thought his jealousy was romantic, his possessiveness a sign of devotion. For the Elena who'd made excuses the first time his hand left a mark. It was an accident. He was stressed. I shouldn't have argued. He apologized, sent flowers, promised it would never happen again. I provoked him. I know what sets him off. It's my fault for not being more careful. The lies tasted like ash now. Elena pulled herself up slowly, every muscle protesting. The mirror in the entryway showed the full damage. The bruise on her cheek had darkened to deep purple, and her lip was swollen where it had split. She lifted the torn edge of her dress, revealing the finger-shaped bruises on her ribs, her upper arm, her shoulder. Evidence. That's what the counselor at the women's shelter would call it. Elena had visited once 3 months ago during a rare moment when Marcus was out of town for business. She'd sat in a small room with cheerful yellow walls and listened to a kind-faced woman explain restraining orders and safety plans and the cycle of abuse. She'd left without giving her real name. Going back had seemed impossible then. Marcus was so careful. He never hit her where people could see, never left marks visible above the collar or below the sleeves. And he was so convincing when he needed to be, charming, successful, the perfect boyfriend to everyone who knew them. Who would believe her? But tonight, something had shifted. They'd been at dinner, some expensive Italian place Marcus had chosen to celebrate his promotion. Elena had made the mistake of smiling at the waiter when he'd refilled her wine glass. That was all. A polite smile. Marcus's hand had found her thigh under the table, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You think he's attractive?" His voice had been pleasant, conversational. Only Elena could hear the edge beneath it. "You want to fuck him, Elena? Is that it?" "Marcus, no, You were just what? Flirting? Making me look like a fool?" "Please, you're hurting me." His grip had tightened. "This is nothing compared to what I could do. You remember that." She'd remembered. She'd sat through the rest of dinner in silence, stomach churning, counting the minutes until they could leave. In the car, Marcus had driven too fast, his jaw clenched, one hand occasionally leaving the steering wheel to grab her wrist, her neck, her hair. "You embarrass me like that again. I'll make sure you regret it." When they'd reached the apartment, she'd known what was coming, had felt it in the electricity of his anger, the set of his shoulders. She'd tried to run, made it as far as the bedroom before he'd caught her. The details after that were hazy, fractured, his hands, the wall, the floor, her own voice screaming, the moment when she'd finally fought back, clawing at his face, and his shock had given her just enough time to grab her purse and run. She'd run through the rain without looking back, feet pounding the pavement, lungs burning. At some point, her mind had supplied the Meridian as a destination. The hotel loomed over Midtown, impossible to miss, Marcus's idea of vulgar excess. "Only people with no class waste money on hotels like that," he'd said once. "All flash, no substance." Good. Let him think she had no class. Let him think she wasn't smart enough to hide somewhere he'd never look. Elena turned away from the mirror and walked to the windows. The blackout curtains were heavy, luxurious. She drew them back carefully, half expecting to see Marcus's face staring up from the street below. Instead, the city sprawled out in a glittering carpet of lights. From 14 stories up, the rain looked almost beautiful, catching the neon and headlights, turning the night into something from a film noir. Somewhere down there, people were living their normal lives, going to bars, heading home from late shifts, arguing with partners who didn't hit them. Her phone sat in her purse, still powered off. Elena knew she should destroy it. Marcus was tech-savvy enough to have installed tracking software, monitoring apps, God knows what else. He'd always known where she was, who she texted, what she searched for online. The thought of him reading her private messages, seeing her pathetic attempts to reach out to old friends he'd isolated her from, made her skin crawl. But the phone also contained the only photos she had of her mother. Elena retrieved it from her purse with shaking hands. She'd power it on just long enough to back up those photos to the cloud, then she'd smash it, throw it in the river, whatever it took to cut that last digital leash. The screen lit up, and immediately, notifications began flooding in. 43 missed calls, all from Marcus. 67 text messages. Elena's finger hovered over the messages, morbid curiosity warring with self-preservation. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't. She looked. Marcus. Where the fuck are you? Marcus. Elena, answer your phone. Marcus. You're making this worse for yourself. Marcus. I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean it. Please come home. I love you. Marcus. You can't just leave. We need to talk about this like adults. Marcus. I checked the apartment. You took money. Where did you go? Marcus. If you think you can just run away, you're stupider than I thought. Marcus. I will find you. You belong to me. Marcus. Please, baby. I'm worried. Just let me know you're safe. The messages cycled between rage and apology, threats and endearments, in a pattern Elena knew by heart. This was how it always went. Anger, then remorse, then anger again when the remorse didn't work. But this time, she wasn't there to fall for it. Her hands moved almost without conscious thought, opening her email, forwarding the messages to herself. Evidence. If she was going to do this, really break free, she needed evidence. The backup took 3 minutes. Elena watched the progress bar creep across the screen, every second feeling like an eternity. When it finally completed, she powered the phone off again. She should smash it now, right now, before she lost her nerve. Instead, she wrapped it in a face towel and buried it at the bottom of her purse. Tomorrow. She'd deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, she just needed to breathe. The bathroom was a temple of white marble and brushed gold. Elena stood under the rainfall shower, letting water as hot as she could stand cascade over her battered body. Steam filled the space, clouding the mirrors, creating a private world where nothing existed except heat and pressure and the gradual unknotting of her muscles. She stayed there until her fingers pruned, until the water began to run cool, until she could no longer feel Marcus's hands on her skin. The hotel provided plush robes and slippers. Elena wrapped herself in both, feeling ridiculous and oddly comforted at the same time. In the mirror, her face was scrubbed clean, the bruise even more visible without makeup to hide it. She looked young, vulnerable, exactly how she felt. The bed called to her, but Elena's stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since lunch, a sad desk salad consumed while Marcus was in a meeting. The minibar revealed itself with the press of a button. Chocolate bars, mixed nuts, bottled water, tiny bottles of liquor. Elena grabbed all of it. She constructed a nest on the bed, pillows propped against the headboard, the duvet pulled up to her chin. Outside, the storm had intensified, rain lashing the windows in waves. But here, in this bubble of luxury and safety, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Peace. It wouldn't last. She knew that. Tomorrow would bring new problems. Money, finding somewhere permanent to stay, figuring out what to do about her job, her things, her entire life. Marcus would escalate. He always did. The calm apology phase would give way to active hunting. But tonight, for these few hours, she had a locked door and walls thick enough to muffle the world. Elena unwrapped a chocolate bar, Swiss, expensive, the kind Marcus would have called frivolous, and took a bite. The sweetness exploded on her tongue, rich and dark and perfect. For the first time in 2 years, she'd made a choice entirely for herself. It felt like rebellion. It felt like survival. It felt, impossibly, like hope. Sleep came in fits and starts, punctuated by dreams of running, of hands reaching for her, of Marcus's voice calling her name. Each time Elena jolted awake, heart pounding, it took several seconds to remember where she was. Safe, locked in, 14 floors between her and the street. The third time she woke, gray dawn light was seeping around the edges of the curtains. Her phone, the new one, her secret one, showed 6:47 a.m. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed clean and glistening. Elena lay still, listening to the silence. In the apartment, Marcus would be waking about now. He was religious about his routine. Up at 7, shower, protein shake, check his phone. He'd see that her phone was off, that she hadn't come home, that her messages remained unread. What would he do? The possibilities cycled through her mind like a dark carousel. He might call her work, spin some story about her being sick, buy himself time before anyone questioned her absence. He might file a missing persons report, play the concerned boyfriend, get the police involved in his search. Or he might do what she feared most. Nothing public, nothing traceable. Just methodically work his way through every place she might go, every person she might contact, until he found her. The thought made Elena's chest tighten. She forced herself out of bed, into the shower again, letting hot water chase away the lingering wisps of nightmares. Today, she needed a plan. Real shelter, not just an expensive hotel room. Money. A way to support herself that didn't involve going back to the coffee shop where Marcus knew she worked. a new life. The enormity of it threatened to overwhelm her. Elena gripped the edge of the marble sink, staring at her reflection, bruised but upright, scared but standing. "You can do this," she whispered to the woman in the mirror. "You have to." Yeah. Breakfast in the pavilion turned out to be an exercise in feeling conspicuously out of place. Despite the early hour, the restaurant was half full of people who looked like they belonged in the Meridian's world. Businessmen in sharp suits, elegant women in designer athleisure, a family with children so well behaved they barely made a sound. Elena, wearing her torn dress from last night because it was literally all she had, felt their eyes follow her to a corner table. "Coffee?" The server appeared, professional smile in place, though Elena caught the slight widening of her eyes when she saw the bruise. "Please, and—" Elena glanced at the menu, her stomach clenching at the prices. $28 for eggs Benedict, $32 for the smoked salmon plate. She'd planned to eat breakfast here and save money on lunch, but at these prices, even that seemed impossible. "The continental breakfast is included with your room," the server said gently, as if sensing Elena's panic. "Pastries, fruit, yogurt, cereals. The hot items are a la carte, but you're welcome to the buffet over there." She gestured to a sideboard Elena hadn't noticed, laden with croissants, muffins, fruit salads, and various other foods that blurred together in her relief. "Thank you." Elena filled a plate, more than she could eat, driven by the same hoarding instinct that had made her pocket extra sugar packets and jelly containers. Who knew when her next meal would be? The coffee was perfect, rich and strong, exactly what she needed. She was reaching for her second croissant when a shadow fell across her table. "Miss Voss?" Adrian Moretti stood there, immaculate in a navy suit, holding his own coffee cup. He looked like he'd slept a full 8 hours and woken up to a personal barber. "May I?" It wasn't really a question. He was already pulling out the chair across from her. "It's your hotel," Elena said. "True." He settled into the seat with the same predatory grace she'd noticed last night. Up close, in the morning light, she could see details she'd missed. The thin scar across his left eyebrow, the calluses on his hands that seemed out of place on someone who wore suits that expensive. "But that doesn't mean I make a habit of interrupting my guests' meals. I wanted to check on you." "I'm fine." "You said that last night." His eyes dropped briefly to her bruised cheek. "I'm still not convinced." Elena set down her coffee cup carefully. "Mr. Moretti, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not really interested in Adrian. And I'm not hitting on you, if that's what you think." His tone was matter-of-fact, almost businesslike. "I'm offering you a job." That stopped her cold. "What?" "You need money. A place to stay that you can actually afford. Safety." He ticked the items off on his fingers like a shopping list. "I need someone who can move through high society spaces without drawing attention. Someone observant. Someone who has reasons to be very, very good at reading when a situation is about to turn dangerous." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "You don't know anything about me. I know you checked into my hotel at midnight in torn clothing, paid cash for one of our most expensive rooms during peak season, and jumped like a startled rabbit when an elevator dinged. I know someone hurt you badly enough that you're running scared." His voice remained calm, conversational. "I also know you've had some practice lying about it. The concierge said you were fine. You told me you were fine, but you're not fine, Miss Voss. And whoever put those bruises on you is probably looking for you right now." The accuracy of his assessment made Elena's skin crawl. "What kind of job involves moving through high society spaces?" "The kind where you're seen but not noticed, where you observe and report back, where you help me identify problems before they become crises." Adrian took a sip of his coffee, studying her over the rim. "I run several businesses beyond this hotel. Some of them attract clientele who prefer discretion. I need people who can be my eyes and ears in rooms where everyone is performing, everyone is lying, and the real business happens in the spaces between words. You want me to spy for you. I want you to survive." His tone sharpened slightly. "Everything else is just details. You work for me, you get a suite in this hotel, one of the long-term residences, fully furnished. You get a salary that will let you start over properly. You get access to security that will make damn sure whoever hurt you doesn't get within 100 feet of this building." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "What's the catch?" Elena asked. The catch is that my world is dangerous in different ways than what you're running from. The catch is that once you're in, you're in. The people I deal with don't react well to loose ends. Adrian leaned back, expression unreadable. But I think you already know about living in dangerous situations. At least with me, you'll be compensated for it. Elena's mind raced. Every instinct screamed that this was insane, accepting a mysterious job from a man she'd met less than 12 hours ago, a man who admitted his world was dangerous, who looked at her like she was a chess piece he was considering moving. But what were her alternatives? Go home to Marcus? Impossible. Stay at the Meridian and burn through her tiny savings in days? Unsustainable. Find a shelter, hope for the best. Spend her days looking over her shoulder? Terrifying. At least Adrian was being honest about the danger. At least he was offering her something Marcus never had. A choice. I need to think about it, she heard herself say. Of course. Adrian stood smoothly, pulling a business card from his jacket pocket. My direct line. Call me when you decide. But Miss Voss. He paused, and something almost like sympathy flickered across his features. Don't think too long. Men like the one who hurt you don't give up easily, and they don't stop escalating until someone makes them. He left her sitting there, the business card heavy in her hand, her half-eaten breakfast forgotten. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Elena returned to her room, triple-locked the door, and spent 2 hours researching Adrian Moretti on the room's desktop computer. What she found was both reassuring and alarming. Publicly, he was exactly what he'd presented, a successful hotelier with properties in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. Before that, he'd made his fortune in private security, providing protection services to celebrities and politicians. There were photos of him at charity galas, art auctions, exclusive clubs. But there were gaps too. Years in his 20s, where his location was listed only as overseas. Business partnerships with men whose names appeared in connection with words like alleged and investigation, and no charges filed. A mention in an article about luxury hotels being used for money laundering, quickly retracted after a lawsuit. Adrian Moretti lived in the spaces between legitimate and criminal, dancing along lines most people didn't even know existed, and he'd offered her a place in that world. Elena's phone, the burner one, sat on the desk beside her. She'd been carrying it for 6 months, paying for it with hidden cash, checking it compulsively for messages that never came because no one had the number. Now she picked it up and dialed the one contact she'd saved. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Women's Crisis Center, this is Jennifer speaking. Hi, Elena's throat closed up. I visited a few months ago. I didn't leave my name, but I sat in the yellow room and you told me about safety planning. I remember. Jennifer's voice was warm, carefully neutral. It's good to hear from you. Are you safe right now? I left. Last night. I'm in a hotel, but I can't afford to stay here much longer, and I don't know what to do. The words tumbled out in a rush. Someone offered me a job, a place to live, but I don't know if I can trust him, and I don't know if I'm making a terrible mistake, and I need someone to tell me if I'm being stupid. Okay, take a breath. Elena could hear papers rustling on Jennifer's end. First, you need to know that leaving is the most dangerous time. Statistics show that the risk of serious harm increases significantly in the first weeks after a victim leaves their abuser. Do you have somewhere safe you can go tonight? Family? Friends? No, I don't talk to them anymore. It's been years. All right. We have emergency shelter space available. I can get you into a bed tonight, help you apply for an order of protection tomorrow, connect you with legal services. The job comes with housing, Elena interrupted. A suite in this hotel. Security? Money. A pause. What kind of job? I don't know exactly. He said something about observing at events, being his eyes and ears. Even as she said it, Elena knew how it sounded. Jennifer's voice remained carefully professional. Sweetheart, I need you to really think about what you're describing. A man you don't know offering you housing and money in exchange for vaguely defined work. That raises several red flags. I've seen situations like this before, and they don't usually end well. It's not like that. He owns the hotel. He's legitimate. A lot of dangerous people appear legitimate. That doesn't mean they're safe. A sigh. Look, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that trading one controlling situation for another, even if it looks different on the surface, isn't really freedom. Real safety comes from building your own foundation, not relying on someone else's. Elena closed her eyes. Jennifer was right. She knew Jennifer was right. But Jennifer didn't understand what it felt like to have $300 to your name and a vindictive ex with unlimited resources hunting for you. Thank you for your help, Elena said quietly. Wait, let me at least get you some resources. Emergency numbers, legal aid information. I have to go. Elena ended the call before Jennifer could argue further. Her hands were shaking again. Real safety comes from building your own foundation. Beautiful sentiment. But foundations required time, resources, and breathing room, none of which Elena had. She picked up Adrian's business card, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. One phone call, and she'd have shelter, security, a salary. All she had to do was trust a dangerous man with a beautiful smile and gaps in his history. Or she could trust herself to survive on her own with nothing. Elena thought of Marcus, methodically working through her list of contacts. Her old roommate from college, they'd stopped speaking after Marcus convinced Elena she was a bad influence. Her coworkers at the coffee shop, he knew where to find them. Her estranged father, Marcus had his number from the one disastrous dinner they'd attempted. Everywhere she might run, Marcus knew how to follow. Except here, except into Adrian Moretti's dangerous world. Before she could second-guess herself, Elena dialed the number on the card. He answered on the first ring. Miss Voss, I was beginning to think you'd decided to take your chances alone. I have conditions, Elena said, forcing her voice steady. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I want my own space, my own key, a lock that only I control. Done. I want to know exactly what you're asking me to do before I agree to do it. No surprises, no vague instructions. Reasonable. And if I want out, if at any point this doesn't work, I get to leave. No retaliation, no threats, no hunting me down. She paused. I've had enough of that for one lifetime. Silence on the other end. Elena held her breath. You can leave any time you want, Adrian said finally. But Miss Voss, understand something. The people I deal with aren't as forgiving as I am. If you learn things, meet people, gain access to information, and then decide to walk away, there will be consequences. Not from me, from them. So yes, you can leave, but you should go into this knowing that some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. It's the truth. I won't lie to you about the risks. His voice softened slightly. But I will protect you. From your ex-boyfriend. From anyone who tries to hurt you. That's not a maybe. That's a guarantee. Elena's chest felt tight. She thought of Marcus's hands around her throat, his weight pinning her down, his voice in her ear promising things would get worse if she ever tried to leave. She thought of the empty years ahead, always looking over her shoulder, always afraid. And she thought of the woman she'd been before Marcus, confident, ambitious, unafraid. Maybe she could be that person again. Maybe not in the way she'd originally imagined, but in some new configuration of strength and survival. When do I start? Elena asked. She could hear the smile in Adrian's voice. How about now? Adrian's office occupied the entire top floor of the Meridian, a sprawling space of floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that managed to feel both austere and luxurious. Elena stood in the center of it, acutely aware of her torn dress and the way her wet sneakers squeaked against the polished concrete floor. Sit. Adrian gestured to a leather chair positioned before his desk. We have a lot to cover. Elena sat, trying not to think about how small she felt in this space, how exposed. Through the windows behind Adrian, the city stretched out in every direction, a kingdom of glass and steel that he seemed to rule from this modern throne room. He didn't sit behind the desk. Instead, he pulled up a chair directly across from her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his dark eyes. First things first, your ex-boyfriend, what's his name? Marcus. Marcus Chen. What does he do? He's a financial analyst at Blackstone, senior associate. Elena's hands twisted in her lap. He's smart, connected. He knows people. Everyone knows people. Adrian pulled out a tablet, fingers moving across the screen. Marcus Chen, Blackstone, approximately 30 years old, based in Manhattan. Is this him? He turned the screen toward her. Elena's stomach lurched at the sight of Marcus's LinkedIn photo, that practiced smile, the one that had fooled her for so long. Yes. Good. I'll have my security team start monitoring him. Phone, email, social media, credit cards. If he breathes in your direction, we'll know about it. Adrian made a note. You said he's looking for you. What has he tried so far? Calls, texts, I don't know what else. I turned my phone off. Smart. Give it to me. What? Your phone. The one he might be tracking. Adrian held out his hand. I'll have it wiped and destroyed. You'll get a new one. Clean. Untraceable. Elena hesitated, thinking of her mother's photos, but she'd already backed those up to the cloud. The phone itself was just a liability now. She retrieved it from her purse and placed it in his palm. Adrian immediately powered it on, ignoring the flood of notifications, and plugged it into a small device on his desk. This will clone your data to a secure server. Everything you want to keep, photos, contacts, whatever, will transfer to your new phone. Everything else gets destroyed. He glanced at her, including any tracking software your ex might have installed. The efficiency of it was almost frightening. Within 5 minutes, Adrian had dismantled a piece of Marcus's control over her life with the same casual ease someone might use to discard junk mail. Now, he continued, setting the device aside, let's talk about what you'll actually be doing for me. Elena straightened in her chair, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. You said something about observing at events. I host gatherings, fundraisers, galas, private dinners, the kind where wealthy people drink expensive wine and pretend they're not negotiating deals that move millions of dollars. His tone was matter-of-fact, almost bored. Most of my guests are exactly what they appear to be, rich, harmless, obsessed with status. But some are more interesting. Money launderers looking for legitimate investments, politicians taking bribes, businessmen with creative accounting practices. And you want me to, what, identify them? I want you to watch. Listen. Remember. Adrian leaned forward slightly. You've spent 2 years reading micro-expressions, monitoring tone shifts, predicting when someone was about to become violent. Those are valuable skills, Miss Voss. In my world, being able to tell when someone's lying, when they're nervous, when they're about to do something stupid, that's worth its weight in gold. It made a twisted kind of sense. All those months of walking on eggshells, analyzing Marcus's every mood, learning to detect anger before it manifested as action. Adrian was right. Those were skills. She'd just never thought of them as marketable. What happens when I identify someone interesting? Elena asked. You report to me. I decide what to do with the information. He paused. Sometimes that means cutting business ties. Sometimes it means gathering more evidence before involving authorities. And sometimes it means absolutely nothing. I just like to know who's in my space. That's vague. It has to be. Every situation is different. Adrian's expression remained neutral. But here's what I can promise you. I won't ask you to do anything illegal. I won't put you in physical danger. And I will never, ever raise a hand to you. Those are my terms. Non-negotiable. Elena searched his face for signs of deception and found only steady certainty. Either he was telling the truth or he was a far better liar than Marcus had ever been. When would I start? There's a gala tomorrow night, Fashion Week closing event, very exclusive, held in the Meridian's ballroom. You'll attend as my guest. He stood, moving to a cabinet against the wall. Which means we need to get you properly outfitted. Can't have you representing me in torn designer wear. He returned with a black credit card. There's a boutique on the second floor. Tell them you're my personal guest and need a complete wardrobe, evening wear, business casual, whatever you want. Get shoes, accessories, the works. Elena stared at the card like it might bite her. I can't. You can and you will. Consider it part of your signing bonus. Adrian pressed the card into her hand. You're going to be visible in my world, Elena. That means looking the part. No arguments. The weight of the plastic in her palm felt surreal. Marcus had never let her have her own credit card, had doled out cash for groceries, for necessities, always with the implicit understanding that she owed him for every dollar. This was different, wasn't it? What about housing? She asked, changing the subject before the comparison could paralyze her. I'll show you. Adrian led her back to the elevator, inserting a keycard before pressing the button for the 15th floor. They rode up in silence, Elena hyper-aware of his presence beside her, calm, controlled, radiating the kind of confidence that came from always being the most dangerous person in any room. The elevator opened directly into a hallway that looked nothing like the 14th floor. Where her current room's corridor had been traditionally elegant, this was sleek and modern. Dark wood paneling, abstract art, recessed lighting that created pools of shadow between each door. The 15th floor is all extended stay suites, Adrian explained, leading her to the third door on the left. Residents only. Requires key card access to even reach this level. Your suite. He unlocked the door and gestured for her to enter first. Elena stepped into a space that made her current room look like a closet. The suite stretched out before her, a full living room with a modern kitchen, a dining area, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Through an open doorway, she glimpsed a bedroom with a king bed and what looked like a walk-in closet. 1,200 square feet, Adrian said from behind her. Fully furnished, utilities included. Housekeeping twice a week if you want it, or never if you prefer privacy. The kitchen's stocked with basics, but there's also 24-hour room service. Elena walked slowly through the space, running her fingers along the back of the sofa, the marble kitchen counter, the dining table that could seat 6. She'd lived with Marcus in a cramped one-bedroom where she'd been afraid to rearrange the furniture without asking permission. This was hers. Entirely hers. The bedroom, Adrian continued, apparently mistaking her silence for uncertainty, has blackout curtains, a king bed, and an ensuite bathroom with both a shower and soaking tub. The closet is, "Why are you doing this?" The question burst out before Elena could stop it. She turned to face him. "You don't know me. I could be lying about everything. I could be crazy, dangerous. You're not." Adrian's voice was calm, certain. "I've spent 20 years evaluating risks, Miss Voss. Reading people, determining threats, deciding who's worth trusting. You're many things, damaged, frightened, in over your head, but you're not a liar, and you're not crazy. How can you possibly know that? Because crazy doesn't run. Crazy stays and makes excuses." He moved to stand by the windows, looking out at the city. "You left. Against every psychological pressure your abuser put on you, against the trauma bond, against the financial dependency, you left. That takes clarity of mind, strength, survival instinct." The words settled over Elena like a blanket, warm and suffocating at the same time. Part of her wanted to believe him. Part of her whispered that this was just another kind of manipulation, prettier than Marcus's, but manipulation nonetheless. "I need you to understand something," she said carefully. "I'm not good at trusting people anymore. Maybe I never was. So if we're going to do this, you need to be honest with me. Always. Even when the truth is ugly." Adrian turned from the window, and something shifted in his expression, a crack in the polished facade revealing something harder underneath. "All right, honest truth?" He crossed his arms. "I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart. I need someone with your specific skill set, and you happen to stumble into my hotel at exactly the right time. That's opportunism, not altruism. But—" He held up a hand before she could respond. "That doesn't mean I'm going to hurt you. My business requires trust, loyalty, discretion. None of those things come from fear. So yes, this arrangement benefits me. But it can benefit you too. Those aren't mutually exclusive." The honesty was almost shocking in its bluntness. Elena found herself laughing, a short, bitter sound. "At least you're not pretending to be my savior." "I'm nobody's savior, Miss Voss. I'm a businessman with expensive tastes and flexible ethics." A slight smile. "But I protect what's mine. You work for me, you live here, that makes you mine to protect. Marcus Chen will learn that the hard way if he tries anything stupid." There was something almost comforting in the cold calculation of it. No false promises of love or rescue. Just a transaction, terms clearly stated, expectations laid out. Elena could work with that. "I want a contract," she said. "Something in writing. My duties, my compensation, the terms of housing. All of it documented. My lawyer will have it ready by this afternoon." Adrian moved toward the door. "In the meantime, go shopping. Get yourself everything you need. Tomorrow night you'll attend the gala with me. Consider it your trial run. And if I fail?" He paused in the doorway, glancing back at her. You won't. Survival has already taught you everything you need to know. Now you just get to use those lessons for profit instead of mere existence." Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone in her new home. She stood in the center of the living room, slowly turning in a circle, trying to absorb the reality of what had just happened. 24 hours ago, she'd been cowering in Marcus's apartment, convinced she had no options. Now she had a suite in a luxury hotel and a job that involved attending galas. It felt like a fever dream. Elena walked to the bedroom, running her hand along the doorframe as if to confirm it was real. The closet was indeed enormous, bigger than some apartments she'd lived in. Empty now, but Adrian expected her to fill it. The black credit card sat heavy in her pocket. She should feel grateful, relieved, safe. Instead, she felt terrified, because accepting this suite, this job, this new life meant acknowledging that her old one was truly over. Meant admitting that she couldn't go back even if she wanted to. Meant stepping fully into Adrian Moretti's world with all its unspoken dangers and beautiful lies. But what choice did she have? Elena pulled out her phone, the new one Adrian had given her before leaving, already set up with a fresh number, and opened the browser. She typed in Marcus Chen Blackstone and watched the results populate. His LinkedIn showed no unusual activity. His Facebook was privacy locked, but his profile picture was still the same one from 6 months ago. Marcus in a suit, that charming smile, giving no indication of the monster underneath. On impulse, Elena navigated to her own Facebook page. She hadn't logged in for months. Marcus had insisted social media was a waste of time, had gradually convinced her to stop posting, stop checking, stop maintaining connections with anyone from her old life. Now she scrolled through her timeline, looking at posts from people she used to know. College friends getting married, having babies, starting careers. Her former roommate had moved to Seattle. A girl from her dorm floor was backpacking through Europe. They'd all moved on, built lives, become adults. And Elena had disappeared into Marcus's orbit, becoming smaller and smaller until she was barely visible. Not anymore. She logged out, closed the browser, and picked up the credit card. Time to become someone new. The boutique on the second floor was called Mirabelle, and it occupied a corner space with windows overlooking Park Avenue. Elena pushed through the glass doors into a world of soft lighting and carefully curated elegance, racks of clothing arranged by color, gleaming glass cases displaying jewelry and accessories, a seating area with champagne always ready to pour. "Good morning." The woman who approached was around 50, perfectly styled in a cream silk blouse and tailored black pants. Her smile was professional but warm. "How may I help you today?" Mr. Moretti sent me." Elena held up the credit card like proof. "He said I should get—" "Of course! You must be his new associate." The woman's demeanor shifted instantly to something even more attentive. "I'm Catherine. Mr. Moretti called ahead to let us know you'd be coming. He mentioned you'd need a complete wardrobe, evening wear for tomorrow's gala, plus business and casual options. Is that correct?" "Yes, I think so." "Wonderful. Let's start with your measurements, shall we?" An hour later, Elena stood in front of a three-way mirror, barely recognizing her reflection. The dress Catherine had selected was a deep emerald green that somehow made her bruised skin look porcelain rather than damaged. The cut was elegant without being revealing, a high neckline that covered the finger-shaped marks on her shoulders, a fitted waist, a skirt that flowed to mid-calf. "With your coloring, jewel tones are perfect," Catherine said, adjusting the fabric. "And this Valentino is ideal for the gala, sophisticated, memorable, but not trying too hard." "How much is it?" Elena asked, afraid of the answer. Catherine named a figure that made Elena's stomach drop. $4,000 for one dress. "Mr. Moretti has an account with us," Catherine continued smoothly, as if sensing Elena's panic. "And he was very clear that you should select whatever you need without worrying about cost. In fact, he suggested we start building you a capsule wardrobe. 3 evening gowns, 5 cocktail dresses, business separates, casual pieces, shoes, bags, jewelry, everything you'd need to move comfortably in his circles." It was too much. Way too much. But the woman in the mirror, poised, elegant, her bruises artfully hidden by clever styling, looked like someone who belonged in Adrian's world. Someone Marcus would never recognize. "What else did you have in mind?" Elena heard herself ask. By the time she left Mirabelle 3 hours later, Catherine had assembled an entire wardrobe that would be delivered to Elena's suite by evening. The emerald gown for tomorrow's gala, plus two other evening options, a black cocktail dress and a navy sheath, tailored pants and silk blouses, cashmere sweaters, a leather jacket that cost more than Elena used to make in a month, shoes, heels, flats, boots, bags ranging from elegant clutches to practical totes. The total had made Catherine smile. Elena had felt faintly nauseous, but when she'd tried to hesitate, to pull back, Catherine had said something that stuck with her. Mr. Moretti doesn't invest in people he doesn't believe in. If he's outfitting you like this, it means he sees potential. Don't insult his judgment by second-guessing it. Now Elena rode the elevator back to her suite, arms full of immediate purchases, undergarments, toiletries, makeup, the kinds of basics that couldn't wait for delivery. The reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls showed a woman who still looked exhausted and bruised, but who was wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater that fit perfectly. A woman who was beginning, maybe, to look like she had options. The suite felt different when she entered it this time, less like a hotel room and more like actual space she inhabited. Elena set her purchases on the dining table and stood for a moment in the silence, listening to the ambient sounds of the building, the distant hum of traffic below. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it, paranoia flooding through her, but the message preview showed it was from Adrian. Contract is ready. My office whenever you're available. Elena changed into one of her new outfits. The navy sheath dress Catherine had insisted was perfect for business meetings, and studied herself in the bathroom mirror. The bruise on her cheek had darkened to deep purple, impossible to hide completely even with the makeup she'd purchased. But the dress's high collar covered her shoulders, and the three-quarter sleeves hid her upper arms. She looked professional, put together, like someone who made deals instead of enduring them. Adrian's assistant, a crisp woman in her 30s named Victoria, greeted Elena when she emerged from the elevator on the top floor. Miss Voss, Mr. Moretti is expecting you. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine, thank you. Victoria led her to a conference room adjacent to Adrian's office, where a leather portfolio waited on the gleaming table. The contract. Mr. Moretti will join you momentarily. Alone, Elena opened the portfolio and began reading. The document was surprisingly straightforward. Employment agreement between Adrian Moretti, individually and on behalf of Moretti Enterprises LLC and Elena Voss. Position: Special Events Coordinator and Consultant. Duties included attending company functions, observing and reporting on guest behavior, and providing security consultation based on behavioral analysis. Salary: $120,000 per year, paid bi-weekly. Elena had to read that line 3 times to believe it. She'd made $32,000 at the coffee shop. Before that, her office job had paid $45,000. She'd never imagined making the kind of money that turned 6 figures. The contract continued. Housing provided as part of compensation package. Suite 1503 at the Meridian Grand. Healthcare benefits. 2 weeks paid vacation. Termination clause that allowed either party to end the agreement with 30 days' notice. It all seemed too good to be true. Elena was searching for the catch when Adrian entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. You look better in that dress than I imagined, he said, setting 1 cup in front of her. Catherine has excellent taste. This contract, Elena gestured at the pages, is exactly what we discussed. No hidden clauses, no gotchas. Adrian sat across from her, completely relaxed. My lawyer wrote it to be clear and enforceable. You'll want your own lawyer to review it, of course. I can recommend someone if you need. I can't afford a lawyer. You can now. He tapped the salary line. That's yearly, before taxes. Monthly take-home will be around $7,000, deposited directly to an account we'll set up for you tomorrow. $7,000 a month. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she set down the contract. This is real? Her voice came out smaller than intended. You're really offering me this? I don't make offers I don't intend to honor. Adrian's expression was serious. But Elena, you need to understand what you're signing up for. The people at tomorrow's gala, they're not all harmless socialites. Some of them are dangerous. And your job is to identify which ones, which means potentially putting yourself in their line of sight. You said you wouldn't put me in physical danger. I won't. But there's a difference between physical danger and psychological discomfort. He leaned forward. These people, the criminals masquerading as businessmen, the politicians taking bribes, they're predators. Different than Marcus, more sophisticated, but predators nonetheless. Being around them, watching them, it might trigger things, remind you of what you've survived. The honesty was almost brutal, but Elena appreciated it more than false reassurance would have offered. I've spent 2 years watching a predator up close, she said quietly. At least this time I get paid for it. Something that might have been respect flickered across Adrian's face. That's the right attitude. Sign the contract. Start tomorrow night. And Elena? He stood, moving toward the door. Welcome to my world. Try not to let it eat you alive. Elena signed the contract with hands that only shook a little. By the time she returned to her suite, evening had fallen over the city, turning the windows into mirrors that reflected her new living room back at her in amber tones. The clothing delivery had arrived, 3 large wardrobe boxes stacked near the door, along with several smaller boxes containing shoes and accessories. Elena spent the next hour unpacking, hanging gowns and dresses in the enormous closet, arranging shoes on built-in shelves, placing jewelry in the dresser drawer. It felt like playing dress-up, like preparing for a role in a play where she didn't know all her lines yet. When her new phone rang, Elena nearly dropped it. She didn't recognize the number, and paranoia surged, Marcus somehow already tracking her new device. But the voice that spoke when she answered was female, professional, unfamiliar. Miss Voss? This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the NYPD. I'm calling regarding a missing persons report filed this morning for an Elena Voss. Are you all right? Elena's blood turned to ice. I'm fine. Who filed the report? A Marcus Chen. He claims you're his girlfriend, and he hasn't heard from you in over 24 hours. Says you left your apartment without explanation, and he's worried about your safety. Of course. Of course Marcus would do this, involve the police, play the concerned boyfriend, build a paper trail that painted him as the victim and her as unstable. I'm not missing, Elena said carefully. I left of my own free will. I'm safe. I'm glad to hear that. However, Mr. Chen seems quite concerned. He mentioned you've been under stress lately, that he's worried about your mental state. Detective Martinez. Elena's voice hardened. I left because Marcus Chen is abusive. I have bruises on my body right now from the last time he hit me. I'm not missing. I'm hiding. From him. A pause. Miss Voss, are you saying you're the victim of domestic violence? Yes. Would you be willing to come to the station and make a statement? We can help you file for an order of protection, connect you with resources. I have resources. Elena thought of Adrian's promise, his security team, the walls of the meridian between her and Marcus. But yes, I'll make a statement. I want it on record that I'm not missing and that Marcus is the reason I left. They arranged a meeting for the following afternoon. When Elena hung up, she felt simultaneously vindicated and terrified. Making an official statement meant confronting Marcus's version of events, meant going on record as a victim of abuse, meant acknowledging publicly and irrevocably that her perfect relationship had been a lie. But it also meant building a case, creating evidence, taking back some measure of control. Elena pulled up the photos she'd taken in the hotel bathroom the night before, close-ups of every bruise, every mark, time-stamped and saved to the cloud. She'd add them to her statement tomorrow. Marcus thought he could control the narrative, thought he could paint her as unstable, missing, in need of rescue. He was about to learn otherwise. That night, Elena stood at the windows of her new suite and looked out at the city stretched before her like a glittering promise. Somewhere down there, Marcus was probably calling hospitals, harassing her old friends, building his search. Let him. For the first time in 2 years, Elena had walls he couldn't breach, resources he couldn't control, and allies he didn't know existed. Tomorrow night, she would walk into a ballroom full of New York's elite on Adrian Moretti's arm. She would wear a dress that cost more than Marcus spent on her in 6 months. She would smile and observe and learn to navigate a world he couldn't even imagine. And someday, not today, not tomorrow, but someday, she would stop being afraid of him entirely. But first, she had to survive the gala. The morning of the gala arrived with unseasonable warmth, sunlight streaming through Elena's windows and turning the city gold. She woke disoriented, reaching instinctively for the space beside her before remembering. No Marcus, no shared bed, no need to gauge his morning mood before daring to move. Just silence, safety, solitude. The relief was so profound it almost hurt. Elena showered and dressed in jeans and a simple black sweater, then forced herself to eat breakfast even though her stomach churned with nerves. The police station appointment loomed at 2 o'clock, and after that she'd have exactly 4 hours to transform herself into someone who belonged at a Fashion Week gala. No pressure. Her phone buzzed as she finished her coffee. A text from Adrian. Security will drive you to the station. Black SUV, license plate JTM 4721. Don't take a cab. Elena hadn't mentioned the police appointment to him, which meant he was monitoring her communications, or had contacts within the NYPD, or both. The thought should have disturbed her more than it did. The SUV was waiting when she emerged from the Meridian side entrance at 1:30, exactly as Adrian had promised. The driver was a woman in her 40s with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd seen combat. "Miss Voss, I'm Catherine, head of Mr. Moretti's security team." She opened the rear door with economical efficiency. "I'll be accompanying you to the station and remaining nearby during your statement. Any issues, you text me immediately." "I can handle giving a statement. I'm sure you can." Catherine's smile was brief but genuine. "But men like your ex don't play fair. If he shows up at the station, if he tries to intercept you, if anything feels wrong, I'm your insurance policy." Elena slid into the SUV's leather interior, oddly comforted by Catherine's blunt pragmatism. At least someone was taking Marcus seriously as a threat. The drive to the precinct took 20 minutes through midday traffic. Catherine parked across the street, handed Elena a business card with a single phone number on it, and said, "I'll be watching the entrance. Any trouble? You call." Detective Martinez turned out to be a woman in her early 50s with kind eyes and the exhausted demeanor of someone who'd seen too many cases like Elena's. She led Elena to a small interview room that smelled of stale coffee and institutional cleaning products. "Thank you for coming in, Miss Voss. I know this isn't easy." Martinez settled into a chair across the battered table. "Before we begin, I want you to know that everything you tell me is confidential. This is a safe space." Elena almost laughed at that. There were no safe spaces, not really, just places where the danger was temporarily held at bay. "I appreciate that," she said instead. "Walk me through what happened. Start wherever feels comfortable." So Elena told her story. Not all of it. That would take hours, days, maybe years, but the relevant parts. Meeting Marcus 2 years ago, the initial charm, the gradual isolation from friends and family, the first time he'd grabbed her hard enough to bruise, his immediate apology, her decision to give him another chance, the pattern that followed. Tension building, explosion, remorse, honeymoon period. Repeat. Each cycle getting worse, the explosions more violent, the remorse less sincere. Martinez took notes without interrupting, her expression carefully neutral. When Elena described the dinner 2 nights ago and what had followed, the detective's pen paused. "And you have documentation of your injuries?" Elena pulled out her phone, navigating to the photos. Martinez examined each one with clinical detachment, though something flickered in her eyes, anger maybe, or recognition of a story she'd heard too many times. "These are good evidence. Clear, time-stamped, show visible injuries." She made another note. "Have you sought medical attention?" "No." "I'd recommend it. Photographs are helpful, but a medical examination creates an official record. We have a nurse practitioner on staff who specializes in documenting domestic violence injuries. She could see you today if you're willing." Elena hadn't considered that. The idea of being examined, photographed again, having strangers catalog Marcus's violence on her skin, it felt invasive. But Martinez was right. The more documentation she had, the stronger any eventual case would be. "Okay, yes." The examination took 45 minutes. The nurse practitioner, a gentle woman named Rosa, measured each bruise, photographed them from multiple angles, documented the split lip and the tender ribs that made Elena wince when pressure was applied. "You're lucky," Rosa said quietly as she worked. "I've seen much worse. But Miss Voss, the pattern here, the location of the bruises, the defensive marks on your forearms, this will escalate if you go back. It always does." "I'm not going back." "Good." Rosa finished her documentation and handed Elena a folder thick with resources, hotline numbers, shelter information, legal aid contacts. Keep these. You never know when you might need them. By the time Elena emerged from the examination room, Detective Martinez had drafted a preliminary report. She slid it across the table for Elena to review. This documents your statement, the injuries, and the pattern of abuse you've described. I'm also noting that Marcus Chen filed a false missing persons report. You're clearly not missing. You left of your own volition due to domestic violence. What happens now? Elena asked. That depends on what you want. You can file for an order of protection, which would legally prohibit Chen from contacting or approaching you. Violation of that order is a criminal offense. Martinez paused. However, I should be honest. Orders of protection are just pieces of paper. They work when abusers respect legal authority. When they don't, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Elena had heard enough stories about women killed by exes despite restraining orders to understand the limitations. I'll think about it, Elena said. Fair enough. In the meantime, I'm going to pay Mr. Chen a visit. Ask him some questions about his missing persons report, about your relationship, about the injuries you've documented. A thin smile crossed Martinez's face. Sometimes just knowing that police are watching is enough to make men like him think twice. Elena wanted to believe that. Wanted to think that official scrutiny would make Marcus back down, rethink his pursuit, accept that she was gone. But she knew him better than that. Marcus didn't accept defeat. He reframed it, spun it, turned every setback into evidence of someone else's failure. If the police questioned him, he'd have explanations ready. She was unstable, prone to self-harm, making false accusations. He'd be cooperative and charming and utterly convincing. And then, once they left, he'd be furious. Catherine was waiting when Elena exited the precinct, falling into step beside her with the casual alertness of a bodyguard who knew her job. How'd it go? I made a statement, got examined. They're going to question Marcus. Good. That puts him on notice. Catherine opened this SUV door. Mr. Moretti wants you to know that our surveillance picked up Chen making calls to your old workplace this morning. He told them you were sick, that he'd bring you in when you felt better. Elena's stomach clenched. Of course, Marcus would try to control that narrative too. Keep her job waiting, make it seem like she was just temporarily indisposed, maintain the fiction that she'd come back. What did the coffee shop say? Not much. Your manager seemed suspicious but didn't push back. Catherine pulled into traffic. However, Chen also called 3 of your former friends. 2 didn't answer. One, a woman named Jessica, told him she hadn't heard from you in over a year and to stop calling her. Jessica. Elena hadn't thought about her old college roommate in months. Marcus had convinced her that Jessica was jealous, toxic, a bad influence. Looking back now, Elena could see the manipulation clearly. Jessica had been trying to warn her about Marcus, and he'd successfully driven a wedge between them before she could listen. Can you get me Jessica's number? Elena asked impulsively. Catherine glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Already sent it to your phone. Mr. Moretti thought you might want to reconnect with people Chen isolated you from. The efficiency of it was both impressive and slightly unsettling. Adrian seemed to anticipate her needs before she articulated them, which was either excellent management or excellent control. Elena wasn't sure which. Back at the Meridian, she had 3 hours before the gala. She spent the first hour staring at Jessica's phone number, composing and deleting text messages, trying to find words that could bridge 2 years of silence. Finally, she typed, Hey, it's Elena. I know it's been forever, and I don't blame you if you don't want to talk to me, but I left Marcus. You were right about him. I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner. The response came within minutes. Holy shit. Elena, are you safe? Where are you? Do you need anything? The concern in those simple questions made Elena's eyes sting. She'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone ask after her well-being without ulterior motives. I'm safe. Living in a hotel right now, figuring things out. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for disappearing, for choosing him over our friendship, for not seeing what you saw. Stop apologizing. I'm just glad you got out. Can we meet up? Get coffee? I want to see you. Elena hesitated. Part of her desperately wanted to say yes, to rebuild that connection, to remember who she'd been before Marcus. But another part, the part that had learned caution the hard way, worried about exposing Jessica to any potential fallout. Soon, I promise. There's just some stuff I need to handle first, but I wanted you to know I was okay. Okay, but Elena, I'm here. Whenever you're ready. No judgment, no conditions. Just friends. Elena set the phone down, surprised by the tears on her cheeks. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed having a friend, someone who cared about her without wanting something in return. Maybe there was a version of her life where she could have that again. But first, she had to get through tonight. The emerald gown hung in her closet like a promise. Elena showered for the second time that day, then sat at her vanity to attempt what Catherine had called gala-appropriate makeup. The bruise on her cheek had faded slightly, but remained visible, a purple shadow that no amount of concealer could completely hide. In the end, she decided not to try. Let people see it. Let them wonder. She was done hiding Marcus's violence. The dress slipped over her head like water, the fabric settling against her skin with a whisper of expensive silk. Elena zipped it carefully, then stood back to assess her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like the terrified creature who'd stumbled into the Meridian 48 hours ago. The dress transformed her, the emerald green making her skin luminous, the cut elegant and sophisticated. Her hair fell in waves over her shoulders, dark against the jewel-toned fabric. The bruise on her cheek looked almost artistic in this light, a shadow that added drama rather than damage. She looked like someone who belonged in Adrian's world. Whether that was true remained to be seen. A knock on her door at exactly 7 o'clock announced Adrian's arrival. Elena grabbed the small clutch Catherine had matched to her dress and opened the door. Adrian stood in the hallway wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than a used car, looking every inch the dangerous sophisticate he was. But when his eyes landed on Elena, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or appreciation. "You clean up well, Miss Voss." "So do you, Mr. Moretti." He offered his arm with old-fashioned formality. "Ready to meet New York's finest hypocrites and criminals?" "As I'll ever be." The ballroom occupied the entire second floor of the Meridian, a space of soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers that threw rainbow light across marble floors. By the time Elena and Adrian arrived, the party was already in full swing. Hundreds of guests in designer gowns and tuxedos, champagne flowing freely, a string quartet playing something classical and lovely in the corner. Elena's first instinct was to shrink back, to find a wall to press herself against, to become invisible. But Adrian's hand on her elbow anchored her. "Breathe, shoulders back. You're not a victim here. You're my associate. Act like it." The blunt command steadied her. Elena straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and let Adrian guide her into the crowd. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and careful observations. Adrian moved through the room like a shark through water, smooth, predatory, completely in control. He introduced Elena as his special events coordinator, a title vague enough to mean anything, and she quickly learned that most people didn't actually care what she did. They cared about proximity to Adrian. "This is Congressman Blake and his wife, Catherine." "Senator Morrison, have you met my associate, Elena Voss?" Douglas Chen, no relation to your ex, I assume, runs the largest private equity firm in Manhattan. That last introduction made Elena's stomach clench. But Douglas Chen turned out to be an elderly man with kind eyes who spent 5 minutes talking about his grandchildren before Adrian smoothly extracted them. "You're doing well," Adrian murmured as they moved toward the bar. "You haven't run screaming yet. The night's young." He smiled at that, a genuine expression that transformed his usually controlled features. "What have you observed so far?" Elena had been watching, cataloging, filing away details the way she'd learned to with Marcus. "The blonde woman in red, the one talking to the senator? She's nervous, keeps touching her necklace, looking at the exits. Either she's uncomfortable in crowds, or she's here for something specific, and it's not going well." "Excellent. Who else?" "The man by the ice sculpture, bald, expensive suit, talking to the couple in matching blue. He's lying about something. His tells are all wrong. Too much eye contact, too still, rehearsed responses." Adrian's eyes followed her direction, then returned to her face with something like approval. "The woman in red is Senator Morrison's mistress. She's nervous because his wife just walked in. The bald man is a developer who's about to be indicted for bribery. He's trying to secure loans before the news breaks. How do you know all this? Because I make it my business to know. He handed her a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. This is what I need from you, Elena. Those observations, those instincts. You see what people are hiding because you've spent years watching for danger. That skill is worth more than you realize. Before Elena could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. The crowd had parted slightly, creating a corridor of space, and through it walked a woman who commanded attention like gravity. She was stunning, early 30s, dark skin, wearing a white gown that should have been bridal, but somehow looked lethal. Her presence silenced conversations in ripples as she moved through the room, heading straight for Adrian. Well, well, her voice was honey over steel. Adrian Moretti throwing a party and actually showing his face. Will wonders never cease? Simone. Adrian's tone was carefully neutral. I didn't realize you were in New York. Last-minute decision. I heard you were hosting Fashion Week's closing gala and couldn't resist. Her eyes slid to Elena, assessing, calculating. And who is this? Your latest acquisition? The word made Elena stiffen, but Adrian's hand tightened slightly on her elbow in warning. Elena Voss, meet Simone Laurent. She runs security consulting for several international clients. By security consulting, he means I clean up messes for people who can afford discretion. Simone's smile was sharp. A pleasure, Miss Voss. That's quite a bruise on your face. Occupational hazard? The casual cruelty of the question stole Elena's breath, but before she could formulate a response, Adrian stepped smoothly between them. If you'll excuse us, Simone, I need to introduce Elena to some potential clients. Of course. We'll catch up later, Adrian. We have so much to discuss. She glided away, leaving tension in her wake. Adrian steered Elena toward the terrace doors without speaking, only relaxing slightly once they'd stepped into the cool night air. Who was that? Elena asked. Someone I used to work with. Someone I no longer trust. Adrian leaned against the terrace railing, looking out at the city lights. Simone operates in the same circles I do, but with fewer scruples. She's brilliant and dangerous and enjoys hurting people. Stay away from her. She knew about my bruise. She makes it her business to know things, weaknesses especially. He glanced at Elena. Don't let her get under your skin, that's what she wants. But it was too late. Simone's casual assessment, your latest acquisition, had wormed its way into Elena's thoughts. Was that what she was? Just another asset in Adrian's collection, valuable only for what she could provide? The thought was still circling her mind when her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her clutch, expecting a message from Catherine or perhaps Jessica. Instead, it was from a number she didn't recognize. I know where you are. Elena's blood turned to ice. She stared at the screen, willing the words to rearrange themselves into something less threatening. Another message followed. Did you really think you could hide from me? I'm outside right now. Come down and we'll talk like adults. Or I'll come up and make a scene, your choice. Marcus. Elena? Adrian was watching her face. What's wrong? She handed him the phone wordlessly. His expression darkened as he read the messages. Catherine. He spoke into his own phone, all business. Chen is here, outside the building. Get eyes on him now. Through the terrace doors, Elena could see the party continuing. Music, laughter, people dancing and drinking and living lives uncomplicated by threats. It felt impossibly far away. He found me, she whispered. I've been here 2 days and he already found me. He was always going to find you. Manhattan's not that big when someone's determined. Adrian pocketed his phone. The question is what we do about it. I should go down, talk to him. Maybe if I just... Absolutely not. Adrian's voice was sharp. You're not negotiating with him, Elena. You're not giving him the satisfaction of seeing you scared. Then what do I do? Before Adrian could answer, Catherine's voice came through his phone's speaker. I have visual on Chen. He's across the street, watching the entrance. No weapons visible, but he's agitated, making calls, pacing. Elena moved to the terrace edge, looking down at the street below. Even from this height, she could pick out Marcus's familiar form, broad shoulders and a dark jacket, phone pressed to his ear, that particular way he had of moving when he was angry. Her phone buzzed again. I can see the lights. I know you're at some party. Very nice, Elena. Fucking some rich guy now? Is that how you're paying for this? The cruelty was so familiar it almost didn't hurt. Almost. He's texting me, Elena said quietly. Adrian read the new message over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. Catherine, call the police. Harassment. Violation of the stop contact order. There is no order yet, Elena interrupted. I didn't file for one. I just gave a statement. Then we'll file tonight. Adrian was already dialing. Martinez? Adrian Moretti. Yes, I know what time it is. I have a situation. Elena Voss's abusive ex is outside my hotel right now, making threats. I'm sending you screenshots. While Adrian spoke to the detective, Elena's phone continued buzzing with messages that cycled between rage and pleading in the pattern she knew so well. You can't just leave me, after everything I've done for you. I love you. Please come down and talk to me. If you don't come down in 5 minutes, I'm coming up there. You're making this worse for yourself. You know how I get when you defy me. Each message was evidence. Each threat another nail in whatever case might eventually be built, but knowing that didn't make them easier to read. Adrian finished his call and turned back to Elena. Martinez is sending officers. They'll pick Chen up for questioning, maybe hold him overnight. It won't solve the problem, but it'll buy us time. Time for what? For you to decide how you want to handle this. Order of protection, pressing charges, whatever you need. His voice softened slightly. But Elena, you need to understand, men like Chen don't stop because you ask nicely. They stop when they're forced to, when the consequences of continuing become worse than the satisfaction of control. So what? I just keep hiding? Keep running? No, you stop hiding. Adrian gestured back toward the ballroom. You go back in there, you hold your head up, and you show him that he doesn't get to dictate your life anymore. The police will handle him tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out long-term solutions. But right now, you make a choice. Let him ruin this evening, or prove to yourself that he doesn't have that power anymore. It was a test. Elena could see that clearly. Adrian was measuring her, deciding if she had the spine to survive in his world, if the investment he'd made in her would pay dividends. But it was also true. She could let Marcus's presence outside reduce her to the cowering victim she'd been, or she could stand up and claim this new life she was building. Elena straightened her shoulders, smoothed her dress, and met Adrian's eyes. Let's go back to the party. Something like respect crossed his features. That's my girl. They re-entered the ballroom just as the quartet finished a piece, polite applause rippling through the crowd. Elena accepted a fresh glass of champagne from a waiter, took a sip to steady herself, and let Adrian guide her toward a cluster of guests she hadn't met yet. Elena, this is Richard Sterling. He owns several galleries in Chelsea. Richard, my associate, Elena Voss. The conversations blurred together, but Elena forced herself to engage, to smile, to observe and catalog, and perform the role Adrian had hired her for. And slowly, imperceptibly, the knot of fear in her chest began to loosen. Marcus was outside, but she was in here. He was making threats, but she had protection. He thought he could terrorize her into submission, but she was standing in a ballroom full of New York's elite, wearing a dress that cost more than he'd spent on her in months, working for a man who made Marcus's power look pathetic by comparison. For the first time since leaving, Elena didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a survivor. An hour later, Catherine's voice came through Adrian's earpiece. Elena couldn't hear the message, but she watched Adrian's expression shift to satisfaction. They've got him, he murmured. Police picked Chen up 2 blocks away. They're taking him in for questioning about the threatening messages. Relief flooded through Elena so powerfully, her knees almost buckled. What happens now? Now he spends a very uncomfortable night answering questions about why he's harassing his ex-girlfriend after she filed a domestic violence complaint. Adrian's smile was cold. Tomorrow, Detective Martinez will encourage him very strongly to stay away from you. And if he doesn't, well, then we escalate. Elena wanted to ask what escalation looked like in Adrian's world, but she wasn't sure she was ready for that answer. The gala continued until nearly midnight. By the time the last guest departed and the ballroom began emptying, Elena's feet ached from her heels and her face hurt from maintaining a pleasant expression. But she'd done it. She'd survived her first official event as Adrian's associate without falling apart. You did well tonight, Adrian said as they rode the elevator back up to the residential floors. Better than I expected, honestly. Thanks, I think. It's a compliment. He studied her thoughtfully. Most people would have fallen apart when their abuser showed up outside. You held it together. That takes strength. The elevator dinged for the 15th floor. Elena stepped out, then paused. Adrian? What happens if Marcus doesn't stop? If the police questioning isn't enough? For a moment, Adrian's carefully maintained mask slipped, revealing something harder underneath. Then I make sure he understands that you're under my protection now, and that I don't tolerate threats against my people. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they sent a chill down Elena's spine, because men who spoke that calmly about threats were usually the most dangerous ones. She'd just traded Marcus's familiar brutality for Adrian's sophisticated violence. The question was whether that exchange would save her or destroy her. Only time would tell. Elena woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through her windows and the unfamiliar sensation of having slept through the night without nightmares. For a moment, she lay still, cataloging the absence of fear. No footsteps in the hallway, no door handle turning, no shadow of Marcus looming over the bed. Just silence and safety and the soft hum of the city 14 floors below. Her phone showed 2 messages. The first was from Detective Martinez, sent at 6 a.m. Well, Marcus Chen was released this morning with a warning. Strongly advised him to cease all contact. Recommend you file for order of protection today. Call me. The second was from Adrian, sent 10 minutes ago. Breakfast meeting, my office, 9 a.m. We need to discuss next steps. Elena checked the time. 8:15. Just enough time to shower and make herself presentable for whatever Adrian had planned. She dressed carefully in tailored black pants and a silk blouse, applied makeup with more confidence than she'd felt in years, and studied her reflection. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a yellowish shadow, easily concealed now. But Elena left it visible, a reminder of what she'd survived and why she could never go back. Adrian's office was already occupied when she arrived. Catherine sat in one of the leather chairs, looking alert despite the early hour, and a man Elena didn't recognize stood by the windows, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that screamed expensive lawyer. Elena? Adrian gestured to an empty chair. This is Richard Castellano, my attorney. Richard, Elena Voss. Castellano's handshake was firm, his smile professional. Miss Voss, Adrian's briefed me on your situation. I specialize in protective orders and harassment cases, among other things. I'd like to help you file for an order of protection this morning. Elena sat, feeling slightly ambushed. I haven't decided if I want to do that yet. Then let me help you decide. Castellano settled into the chair beside her, pulling out a tablet. An order of protection legally prohibits Marcus Chen from contacting you, coming within a certain distance of you, or engaging in threatening behavior. Violation is a criminal offense, punishable by arrest and potential jail time. Detective Martinez already told me this. She also said they're just pieces of paper that don't actually stop determined abusers. That's true to an extent, Castellano acknowledged, but they create legal consequences. Right now, if Chen shows up at your door, you can call the police and they'll ask him to leave. With an order of protection, they arrest him immediately. It shifts the burden of proof and gives you legal recourse. Catherine leaned forward. It also creates a paper trail. Every violation gets documented. If this escalates to the point where criminal charges are filed, that documentation matters. And if he ignores it? Elena asked. If he shows up anyway? Then we escalate. Adrian's voice was calm, final. But first we try the legal route. Give Chen a chance to walk away before things get ugly. Elena studied the 3 faces watching her, Adrian calculating and controlled, Catherine alert and ready, Castellano professionally sympathetic. They were all waiting for her decision, but the subtext was clear. This was a test of whether she'd commit to protecting herself or keep hoping Marcus would simply give up. All right, she said finally. Let's file the order. Castellano spent the next hour walking her through the process, filling out forms on his tablet, while Elena recounted the history of abuse. It was easier the second time, the words less jagged, though no less painful. When they finished, Castellano promised to file the petition that afternoon and have it served to Marcus by end of business. He'll have the opportunity to contest it in court, Castellano explained, But given the documented injuries, the police reports, and the threatening messages, I'm confident the judge will grant at least a temporary order. We'll argue for a full year at the hearing. After Castellano left, Catherine excused herself to coordinate security updates, leaving Elena alone with Adrian. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. "I don't know yet. Ask me after Marcus gets served." "Fair enough." Adrian moved to the windows, hands in his pockets. "I have another event tomorrow night. Smaller than the gala, more intimate. Dinner party at a client's penthouse in Tribeca. I'd like you there." Elena's stomach clenched. The gala had been overwhelming enough, and she'd had champagne and crowds to hide behind. An intimate dinner party meant closer scrutiny, fewer escape routes. What kind of client? The kind who moves money across borders without asking too many questions about where it came from. Adrian's reflection in the window was unreadable. His name is Vincent Calabresi. He owns a chain of luxury car dealerships, some real estate in Miami, and probably half a dozen businesses I don't know about. He's hosting a small gathering for potential investors in a new venture. And you want me to observe? I want you to tell me if anyone at that dinner is lying about their interest in Calabresi's venture. If anyone seems nervous, out of place, asking the wrong questions. Adrian turned to face her. Vincent is legitimate on paper, but his money comes from sources that wouldn't survive IRS scrutiny. If he's expanding his operation, I need to know if he's bringing in partners who might draw unwanted attention. It was the most explicit Adrian had been about the less-than-legal aspects of his world. Elena appreciated the honesty even as it made her nervous. What happens if I identify someone problematic? I have a conversation with Vincent. Suggest he reconsider his partnership. What he does with that information is his business. Adrian's expression remained neutral. I'm not asking you to do anything dangerous, Elena. Just watch and report. The rest is my responsibility. She wanted to ask what his responsibilities entailed, what conversations with men like Vincent Calabresi looked like when millions of dollars in criminal liability were at stake. But part of her didn't want to know the answer yet. What time tomorrow? 7, cocktail attire. Catherine will drive you. Elena nodded, already planning which dress to wear, what questions to prepare for. The gala had been a trial by fire. This would be more surgical, more focused, more dangerous probably, though in subtler ways. There's one more thing. Adrian pulled an envelope from his desk drawer and held it out. Your first paycheck. Technically, you've only worked 2 days, but I'm paying you for the full 2 weeks. Elena opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a check for over $4,000. $4,000 for attending a gala and agreeing to go to a dinner party. The absurdity of it made her want to laugh and cry simultaneously. This is too much. It's exactly what we agreed on. $7,000 monthly, paid bi-weekly. Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact. Open a bank account today. Deposit it. Start building financial independence. Financial independence. The words felt foreign, impossible. Elena had spent 2 years dependent on Marcus for every dollar, every meal, every basic necessity. The idea of having her own money, her own account, her own resources, it was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me. You're earning it. Adrian's phone buzzed and he glanced at it, expression tightening. I need to take this. Catherine will help you with the bank account if you need assistance. He was already answering the call as Elena left, his tone shifting to the clipped efficiency of business. She clutched the check in her hand and rode the elevator down to the lobby, still half convinced this was all some elaborate dream she'd wake from to find herself back in Marcus's apartment. But the check was real. The suite upstairs was real. The bruises fading on her skin and the freedom to walk out the Meridian's front doors without asking permission, all real. Elena opened a bank account at the Chase branch 3 blocks away, depositing the check and watching the teller's professional smile widen slightly when she saw the amount. By the time Elena left, she had a checking account, a savings account, and a debit card with her name embossed on it. Such a small thing. Such an enormous thing. She was walking back to the hotel, lost in thought, when a voice behind her made every muscle in her body lock up. Elena. She knew before turning around, recognized the timbre of his voice like a familiar nightmare. Marcus stood on the sidewalk 15 feet away, hands in his jacket pockets. that careful expression on his face that used to precede his worst rages. Don't. Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. Don't come any closer. I just want to talk. 5 minutes. Please. He took a step forward, and Elena instinctively stepped back. Baby, this is crazy. Whatever you think I did, I don't think, I know. I have photographs, medical documentation, police reports. Her hand found her phone in her pocket. And you're about to have a restraining order served on you, so this conversation is already a violation. Marcus's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then that familiar anger barely held in check. You went to the police? After everything I've done for you? You mean after everything you did to me? I never... He caught himself, glanced around at the pedestrians passing on either side, lowered his voice. You're making a mistake. That hotel, that guy you're with, you think he cares about you. He's using you, Elena, just like you're using him for his money. The accusation should have stung. Instead, Elena felt oddly calm, because even if Adrian was using her, at least the terms were clear. At least she was compensated. At least she had the freedom to leave if she chose. Marcus had given her none of those things. I need you to leave, she said clearly. Stop calling. Stop texting. Stop showing up places I am. We're done, Marcus, completely done. You don't mean that. He took another step forward, his hand reaching out. Come home. We can fix this. I'll get help, therapy, whatever you want. Just come home. It was the same script he'd used after every violent episode. Promises of change, commitments to counseling, declarations that this time would be different. And every time, Elena had wanted to believe him badly enough that she'd ignored the evidence that nothing ever actually changed. Not this time. No. The word felt powerful, final. I'm not coming home. I'm not fixing this. There is no this anymore. You need to accept that and move on. Marcus's face hardened, the mask slipping to reveal the anger underneath. You think you're better than me now? Because you're fucking some rich asshole who owns a hotel? I think I deserve better than being hit. That's a pretty low bar, Marcus, and you couldn't clear it. Before he could respond, a familiar black SUV pulled up to the curb. Catherine emerged from the driver's seat, her body language radiating controlled threat. Miss Voss, is there a problem here? Elena had never been so relieved to see another human being. No problem. Mr. Chen was just leaving. Catherine's eyes never left Marcus. I suggest you do that. Now. Unless you'd like me to call the police and explain how you're harassing Miss Voss in violation of the order of protection that's being served to you this afternoon. Marcus's jaw clenched. For a moment, Elena thought he might escalate. Might do something stupid that would get him arrested right there on the street. But whatever he saw in Catherine's expression made him reconsider. This isn't over, he said quietly, the words clearly meant for Elena alone. Yes, Elena replied. It is. She let Catherine guide her into the SUV, refusing to look back as they pulled into traffic. But her hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding her system now that the immediate threat had passed. You handled that well, Catherine said as they drove. Stayed calm, didn't engage beyond what was necessary. I thought I was going to throw up. But you didn't. That's what matters. Catherine glanced at her in the rearview mirror. For what it's worth, men like Chen are cowards. They rely on intimidation and control because they're terrified of women who won't submit. You stood your ground. That scares him more than anything else you could do. Elena wanted to believe that. Wanted to think that standing up to Marcus would make him back down, accept defeat, leave her alone. But she'd seen the look in his eyes. The barely contained rage, the wounded pride, the absolute conviction that she belonged to him. Marcus wasn't done. Not even close. The rest of the day passed in a blur of administrative tasks, getting her new debit card, buying groceries to stock her suite's kitchen, avoiding the urge to check her phone every 5 minutes for threatening messages. By evening, Elena felt wrung out, exhausted by the constant vigilance required to navigate her new life. She was heating up soup from room service when her phone rang. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. Hey, Elena answered, surprised by how much relief flooded through her at the familiar voice. Hey yourself. I've been thinking about you all day. How are you holding up? I saw Marcus today. On the street. He tried to talk to me. Jesus. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? No. I had security with me. They made him leave. The words felt surreal even as Elena spoke them. Security. Like she was someone important enough to require protection. Security? Elena, where exactly are you staying? So Elena told her, an edited version leaving out the specifics of her arrangement with Adrian but conveying the basics. Jessica listened without interrupting, though Elena could hear the concern in her occasional sounds of acknowledgement. I don't know if this is good or bad, Jessica said finally. On one hand, you're safe and you have resources. On the other hand, you're working for someone you barely know doing vaguely defined work at sketchy events. I know how it sounds. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you traded one controlling man for another, even if this one's paying you for the privilege. The observation cut deep because Elena had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it from Jessica made it harder to dismiss. It's not the same, Elena said, more defensively than she intended. Adrian doesn't hit me, doesn't scream at me, doesn't tell me what to wear or who to talk to or how to spend my time. He just pays me to attend events and observe people. And you're living in his hotel, working for his company, dependent on him for housing and income. A pause. I'm not trying to be a bitch, Elena. I'm trying to make sure you're not just swapping one cage for another. Elena's throat tightened. What else was I supposed to do? I have $300 to my name and an ex-boyfriend who won't stop hunting me. Adrian offered me a way out. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's better than where I was. I know it is. Jessica's voice softened. I just worry about you. You've been through so much and I don't want to see you get hurt again. I'm being careful. Are you? Because from what you've told me, this Adrian guy operates in some pretty gray areas. What happens if you witness something illegal? If you become a liability? Elena didn't have a good answer to that. She'd been so focused on escaping Marcus that she hadn't fully considered the potential consequences of entering Adrian's world. Can we get coffee soon? Jessica asked. I want to see you. Make sure you're really okay. Soon, I promise. There's just some stuff I need to handle first. After they hung up, Elena sat in her silent suite and stared out at the city. Jessica's concerns echoed in her mind, mixing with her own doubts. Was she really free, or had she just traded one form of captivity for another? The difference, she decided, was choice. Adrian had laid out the terms of their arrangement clearly. She'd signed a contract with an exit clause. She could leave if she wanted, even if there would be consequences. Marcus had never given her that option. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Elena's heart jumped, expecting another message from Marcus. Instead, it was a photo, a legal document with an official seal. The order of protection granted by a judge prohibiting Marcus Chen from contacting or approaching Elena Voss within 500 feet. A second message followed from Castellano. Served 1 hour ago. Chen accepted service without incident. You're legally protected now. Legally protected. The words should have brought relief. Instead, Elena just felt tired. Because she knew Marcus. Knew how he thought, how he operated, how he reacted when told he couldn't have something he considered his. A piece of paper wasn't going to stop him. The dinner party in Tribeca the following evening occupied a penthouse that made even the Meridian's luxury look modest by comparison. Vincent Calabrese's home was all glass walls and modern art, the kind of studied minimalism that costs millions to achieve. Elena arrived with Adrian in the back of a town car, wearing a black cocktail dress that Catherine had assured her struck exactly the right balance between elegant and forgettable. Her role tonight was to observe, not to be observed. Remember, Adrian murmured as they rode the private elevator up to the penthouse, you're here as my associate. If anyone asks, you consult on event planning and guest relations. Keep it vague. And what am I actually looking for? Anything that feels off. People who seem nervous around Calabrese. Anyone asking too many questions about his business operations. Guests who seem more interested in gathering information than investing money. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Vincent Calabrese himself stood in the expansive foyer, a man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of tan that came from owning property in warm climates. His smile was practiced, his handshake firm. Adrian, good to see you, my friend, and this must be the lovely Miss Voss I've heard about. Elena accepted his kiss on both cheeks, noting the expensive cologne and the calculating way his eyes assessed her. Not sexually. This was purely professional evaluation, determining her potential value or threat level. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Calabrese. Vincent, please. Any associate of Adrian's is a friend of mine. He gestured toward the living room where other guests were already mingling. Come, have a drink. We'll eat in an hour. Well, the gathering was smaller than the gala, perhaps 15 people total, all dressed in expensive casual wear, all radiating the particular confidence that came from having more money than they could spend in a lifetime. Elena accepted a glass of wine from a server and positioned herself near a conversation cluster, appearing engaged while actually cataloging details. There was a couple in their 40s discussing yacht maintenance, a trio of men arguing good-naturedly about cryptocurrency, a woman who appeared to be Vincent's wife, holding court near the windows with stories about their recent trip to the Amalfi Coast. And there, standing slightly apart from the others, was a man who didn't quite fit. He was younger than most of the guests, early 30s, wearing a suit that was expensive but not quite expensive enough. His body language was wrong too, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes darting around the room, drink held but not consumed. Everything about him screamed nervous energy barely contained. Elena moved closer, positioning herself within earshot of his conversation with an older gentleman she didn't recognize. "So you're interested in Vincent's new venture?" the older man was asking. "Very interested. I think there's real potential for growth in the luxury automotive market, especially with the pivot toward electric vehicles." The younger man's voice was confident, practiced, but his hands were shaking slightly. "And you have the capital to invest at the level Vincent's looking for?" "Absolutely. My firm specializes in emerging market opportunities. We're very excited about this partnership." It was perfectly plausible, perfectly reasonable, and completely, obviously a lie. Elena caught Adrian's eye across the room and gave the subtlest nod toward the nervous man. Adrian's expression didn't change, but she saw him process the information, filing it away. Dinner was served in a dining room with a view of the Manhattan skyline that probably cost more per month than most people made in a year. Elena found herself seated between an investment banker and a real estate developer, both of whom spoke in the casual shorthand of people comfortable with obscene wealth. She played her role perfectly, asking polite questions, laughing at mediocre jokes, appearing interested while actually watching the nervous man across the table. He'd introduced himself as David Chen, no relation to Marcus, he joked, though Elena's stomach had clenched at the name anyway. David Chen picked at his food, drank too much wine, and asked surprisingly detailed questions about Vincent's business operations. Questions that suggested either genuine due diligence or something more problematic. "How do you handle regulatory compliance across your various holdings?" David asked during the main course. "The automotive industry has such stringent oversight." Vincent's smile didn't waver. "We have excellent legal counsel. They ensure everything we do is above board." "Of course. I just meant with operations in multiple states, different jurisdictions. It must be complex to navigate." "That's what I pay lawyers for." Vincent's tone had cooled slightly. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. Due diligence, you know." But it wasn't just due diligence. Elena could see it in the way David's jaw tightened, the way his eyes tracked Vincent's responses. He was fishing for information, trying to identify vulnerabilities or inconsistencies. He was either a very paranoid investor or something else entirely. The evening continued with after-dinner drinks and dessert. Elena managed to position herself near David as he stood on the terrace, ostensibly admiring the view. "Quite a place," she said conversationally. David startled slightly, as if he'd been lost in thought. "Yeah, Vincent's done well for himself." "Are you really planning to invest?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. For a moment, his careful mask slipped, revealing something raw underneath. Fear, maybe, or desperation. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you don't seem like the other guests here. You're asking different questions, looking for different information." Elena kept her tone light, curious rather than accusatory. "I'm just wondering what you're really doing here." David's hand tightened on his drink glass. "I should get back inside." "David?" Elena touched his arm gently. "If you're in some kind of trouble, if someone sent you here to gather information on Vincent, you should leave. These people aren't forgiving when they feel betrayed." For a long moment, David just stared at her. Then he laughed, a bitter sound without humor. You don't know anything about me. I know you're terrified. I know you're in over your head. And I know that whatever you think you're going to accomplish tonight, it's not worth what will happen if you get caught. She left him on the terrace and returned to the party, finding Adrian in conversation with Vincent near the bar. Ah, Miss Voss. Vincent smiled warmly. Adrian was just telling me you have a gift for reading people. What's your assessment of my little gathering? It was a test. Elena could feel both men watching her, waiting to see if she'd be diplomatic or honest. Your guests are impressive, she said carefully, though I'm not sure all of them are here for the reasons they claim. Vincent's expression sharpened. Oh? Who concerns you? David Chen. He's asking a lot of questions about your business operations. Questions that feel more like an investigation than due diligence. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vincent exchanged a glance with Adrian, some unspoken communication passing between them. Interesting, Vincent said quietly. Thank you for that observation, Miss Voss. Very helpful indeed. Adrian placed a hand on Elena's elbow, subtle guidance. We should be going. Early morning tomorrow. They made their goodbyes and left, the town car waiting in the circular drive. Elena didn't speak until they were several blocks away, city lights streaming past the windows. What's going to happen to David Chen? She asked. Nothing violent, if that's what you're worried about. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. Vincent will have him investigated. If he's working for law enforcement or a rival, appropriate measures will be taken. What kind of measures? The kind that ensure he can't cause problems. Adrian looked at her directly. You did well tonight, Elena. You identified exactly what I needed you to identify. He was terrified. Whatever he's mixed up in, he didn't want to be there. Probably not. But he made choices that led him to Vincent's dinner table, asking dangerous questions. Those choices have consequences. A pause. Welcome to my world, Elena. Not everyone in it is a monster, but everyone in it is complicit in something. The words settled over her like a weight. Elena stared out at the passing city, thinking about David Chen and his shaking hands, about Vincent Calabrese and his carefully maintained legitimacy, about Adrian and the violence he orchestrated with such casual efficiency, about herself sitting in this car, having just helped identify a potential threat to a man who probably laundered money for criminals. Jessica had asked if she was trading one cage for another. Elena was beginning to think the answer might be yes. But at least this cage had a door she could open. Whether she'd ever be brave enough to walk through it remained to be seen. The question of the cage haunted Elena through the following week. She attended 2 more events with Adrian, a charity auction in the Upper East Side and a private screening at a media mogul's townhouse, each time perfecting her role as the observant associate who saw what others missed. The paychecks continued arriving, her bank balance growing to numbers that still felt unreal. She bought new clothes, reconnected cautiously with Jessica over coffee, and slowly began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could build something resembling a normal life. But Marcus wouldn't let her forget the past. The violations started small. A bouquet of roses delivered to the Meridian's front desk with a card reading, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." Catherine intercepted it, documented it, forwarded the information to Detective Martinez. A violation of the order of protection, officially recorded. Then came the emails to her new account, long, rambling messages that cycled between apology and accusation. "You're destroying my life," one read. "Everyone at work knows you filed false charges. My career is ruined because of your lies." Another arrived the same day. "I love you. I'll always love you. Please just talk to me. 5 minutes, that's all I ask." Each email was forwarded to Castellano, added to the growing file of violations. But Marcus was careful never to threaten directly, never to say anything that would constitute clear criminal harassment. He stayed just inside the boundaries of plausible deniability. Until he didn't. Elena was leaving the Meridian on a Thursday afternoon, heading to meet Jessica for lunch when she spotted him across the street. Marcus stood on the corner, not hiding, not approaching, just watching. When their eyes met, he smiled and raised his phone, snapping a photo. The message arrived 30 seconds later. "You look good. New dress? Guess that's what fucking rich men gets you." Elena's hands shook as she showed the message to Catherine, who'd appeared at her elbow the moment Marcus was spotted. "That's it," Catherine said grimly. "He's violated the order directly. We're calling the police now." But by the time officers arrived, Marcus had vanished into the afternoon crowd. The photo on Elena's phone proved he'd been there, but without witnesses to confirm he'd approached within 500 feet, the violation was harder to prosecute. "He's testing boundaries," Detective Martinez explained when she called that evening, "seeing how much he can get away with. The good news is, we're building a strong case for stalking and harassment. The bad news is, these cases take time." "How much time?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer would be unsatisfying. "Weeks? Maybe months? We need to establish a clear pattern of behavior, gather enough evidence to convince a prosecutor to file charges." Martinez's voice softened. "I know that's not what you want to hear, but you're doing everything right, documenting every contact, reporting every violation. Eventually, we'll have enough to put him away." Eventually. The word offered no comfort. That night, Elena stood at her suite's windows and watched the city below, thinking about David Chen and the choices that had led him to Vincent Calabrese's table. About the consequences Adrian had mentioned so casually. About the difference between the violence Marcus inflicted with his fists and the violence men like Adrian orchestrated with phone calls and money. Her phone rang. Adrian's name appeared on the screen. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "My office. Now." The tension in his voice sent alarm bells ringing. Elena grabbed her jacket and headed for the elevator, mind racing through possibilities. Had she done something wrong at the last event? Had Vincent discovered she'd warned David? Had Marcus escalated in ways she didn't know about yet? Adrian was standing by his windows when she entered, silhouetted against the city lights. He didn't turn around. "Marcus Chen violated the protection order again today," he said quietly. "I know." Catherine called the police. "I'm not talking about the photo." Now Adrian turned, and Elena saw something in his expression she'd never seen before, barely controlled fury. "2 hours ago, Chen showed up at your old coffee shop, told your former manager that you'd been kidnapped by a dangerous criminal, said I was holding you against your will, that you needed to be rescued." Elena's stomach dropped. "What?" "He was very convincing, apparently. Showed them photos of your bruises, said he had proof I was the one who hurt you. Your manager called the police. They're currently investigating whether you're here of your own free will or if you're a trafficking victim." The absurdity of it would have been funny if it weren't so dangerous. Marcus had taken the evidence of his own violence and weaponized it against Adrian, twisting the narrative to paint himself as the concerned ex-boyfriend and Adrian as the abuser. It was brilliant, in a sick way. Exactly the kind of manipulation Marcus excelled at. "I'll call Detective Martinez," Elena said. "Explain what's actually happening. She knows the real story." "Martinez is already on it. She vouched for you, explained the domestic violence history, made it clear that you're here voluntarily." Adrian's jaw tightened. "But Elena, this is a problem. Chen is escalating in ways that could damage both of us. He's trying to make me look like a criminal trafficking vulnerable women. That kind of publicity could destroy my businesses, trigger investigations I can't afford." The subtext was clear. Marcus wasn't just threatening Elena anymore. He was threatening Adrian's entire operation, and men like Adrian didn't tolerate threats. "What are you going to do?" Elena asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold, measured, devoid of emotion. "I'm going to give Marcus Chen exactly one opportunity to walk away. A meeting, somewhere neutral, where I explain very clearly what will happen if he continues harassing you. If he's smart, he'll take the warning and disappear. If he's not," Adrian trailed off, "then we handle it differently." "Handle it how?" "However necessary." Adrian met her eyes. "I told you I protect what's mine. You work for me, you live in my building, that makes you my responsibility. Chen needs to understand that touching you has consequences beyond legal filings and police reports." Elena's mouth went dry. This was the moment, the point where Adrian's world revealed its true nature, where the sophisticated veneer cracked to show the violence underneath. She could stop this, refuse to let Adrian get involved, insist on handling Marcus through official channels only. But official channels were failing. Marcus had violated the protection order repeatedly with minimal consequences. He'd tried to have her arrested as a trafficking victim. He was escalating, getting bolder, more creative in his attacks. And Elena was tired of being afraid. "When is this meeting?" she asked. "Tomorrow night. I'll have Catherine bring him to a location of my choosing." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "You don't need to be there. In fact, I'd prefer if you weren't." "No." The word came out stronger than Elena expected. "If you're doing this because of me, I should be there. I should face him." "Elena, I need to do this, Adrian. I need to look him in the eye and make it clear that I'm not his victim anymore, that he doesn't get to terrorize me into submission." She took a breath. "Please, let me be there." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a strength he hadn't expected to find. He studied her for a long moment before nodding. "All right, but you follow my lead. No confrontation unless I say so." "Understood?" "Understood." The next 24 hours felt like waiting for an execution. Elena went through the motions of her day: breakfast, email, a phone call with Castellano about the latest violations, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying every possible scenario for how the meeting might unfold. Jessica called around noon, her voice tight with concern. "Elena, I just got a weird message from Marcus. He's asking if I've seen you, saying you're in danger, that some guy is holding you hostage. What the hell is going on?" So Elena told her everything: the protection order, the escalating violations, Marcus's attempt to frame Adrian as her captor. Jessica listened in increasingly horrified silence. "This is insane," Jessica said finally. "Elena, you need to get law enforcement more involved. FBI, someone with actual power to stop him." "Then I'm handling it." "Are you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're letting your boss, who you barely know, and who operates in extremely gray legal areas, handle it for you." A pause. "I'm worried about you. This whole situation, it's spiraling." "I know it is. But Marcus won't stop unless someone makes him stop. The legal system is too slow, too limited. Adrian can do things the police can't. That's what scares me." Jessica's voice was quiet. "What if Adrian's solution is worse than the problem?" Elena didn't have an answer to that, because the truth was, she didn't know what Adrian was capable of. She'd seen hints of it: the casual way he discussed consequences, the network of connections that let him know things before they became public knowledge, the underlying threat in every polite conversation. But she hadn't seen the reality of his violence yet. That was about to change. The meeting was set for 8 o'clock in a restaurant in Hell's Kitchen that Adrian apparently owned through one of his shell companies. Catherine drove Elena there in silence, pulling up to a back entrance just as the sun was setting behind the buildings. "He's already inside," Catherine said. "Second floor, private dining room. Adrian's waiting for you." Elena's heart hammered as she climbed the stairs. The restaurant was closed for a private event, Adrian's event, empty except for 2 men positioned near the exits who had the unmistakable bearing of security. Adrian stood in the doorway of the private dining room, wearing dark jeans and a black sweater instead of his usual suit. He looked younger this way, less like a businessman and more like what Elena suspected he really was underneath the polish. A man who'd learned violence young and never forgotten it. "Last chance to change your mind," he said quietly. Elena shook her head and walked past him into the room. Marcus sat at a table in the center, flanked by 2 more of Adrian's security team. His hands were free, his posture defiant, but Elena could see the fear in his eyes when he looked at the men surrounding him. "Elena." His voice cracked on her name. "Thank God. These men, they forced me here. They said I wanted to talk to you." Elena walked slowly toward the table, Adrian a silent presence behind her. "And I do. One last time." Marcus's expression shifted rapidly. Confusion, hope, calculation. "Baby, I knew you'd come around. I knew you still loved me. We can fix this. We can't fix anything, Marcus. There is no we. There never really was." Elena pulled out a chair and sat across from him, maintaining eye contact. "You controlled me, hurt me, made me believe I was worthless without you, but I'm not, and I'm done letting you terrorize me." "I never—" Marcus glanced at Adrian, then back to Elena. "This is him, isn't it? He's the one who put these ideas in your head. He's manipulating you, using you—" "Stop!" Adrian's voice cut through Marcus's protests like a blade. You don't get to speak anymore. You get to listen. He moved around the table, positioning himself between Elena and Marcus with deliberate precision. When he spoke again, his tone was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made it more terrifying. Marcus Chen, age 32, senior analyst at Blackstone, decent salary, solid career trajectory until recently. You have a problem with anger, with control, with accepting that women are autonomous human beings rather than property. Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. You violated a protection order 7 times in 2 weeks. Sent flowers, emails, made false police reports, showed up at Elena's old workplace to spread lies about her current situation. You've also been researching me, my businesses, my properties, looking for ammunition. Marcus's face had gone pale. How did you... I make it my business to know things, especially when someone threatens what's mine. Adrian set his phone on the table. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop. Completely, immediately, permanently. No more emails, no more flowers, no more showing up places Elena frequents. No more attempts to contact her friends or manipulate law enforcement. You're going to delete her number, block her on every platform, and pretend she never existed. And if I don't? Marcus's voice tried for defiance but came out shaky. Adrian smiled, and it was the coldest expression Elena had ever seen on a human face. Then I destroy you. Not physically. That's too crude. But I have connections at Blackstone. One phone call and your career is over. I have information about your, let's call them, creative expense reports. The client dinners that were actually personal meals, the travel reimbursements for trips you never took. Small things, but enough to get you fired for cause, blacklisted in the industry. Marcus's face went from pale to ashen. You're lying. You can't. I also have documentation of your harassment, not just what you've done to Elena, but to 2 previous girlfriends. Women who were too scared to file police reports, but who kept evidence. Emails, text messages, photos of injuries remarkably similar to the ones Elena documented. Adrian leaned forward. I can make all of that public. Send it to your employer, your family, your professional contacts. Make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. Elena watched Marcus crumble, his carefully constructed facade shattering under the weight of Adrian's threats. This was what real power looked like. Not the crude violence of fists and shouting, but the surgical application of information and connections to dismantle someone completely. You can't do this, Marcus whispered. I can and I will, unless you agree to my terms. Adrian straightened. Walk away. Disappear from Elena's life entirely. Do that, and I let you keep your job, your reputation, your comfortable existence. Continue harassing her, and I make sure you lose everything. The silence stretched out, broken only by Marcus's ragged breathing. Elena watched him, this man who'd terrorized her for 2 years, and felt nothing but tired pity. He looked small now, diminished, exactly what he'd always been underneath the aggression. A frightened boy playing at being a man. I need to hear it from you, Adrian said softly. Your agreement to these terms. Marcus's jaw worked, pride warring with self-preservation. Finally, he nodded. Say it out loud. I agree. I'll leave her alone. Not good enough. Adrian's voice hardened. I need specifics. What exactly are you agreeing to? Marcus closed his eyes, and when he spoke, the words came out defeated, broken. I'll stop contacting Elena. No calls, no texts, no emails. I won't go near her workplace or her friends. I won't file false reports or try to damage her reputation. I'll delete her information and move on with my life. Good. Adrian pulled out a document from his jacket. Sign this. It's a written agreement to the terms we just discussed, with specific penalties for violations. Break it, and I don't give you another warning. I just activate every consequence I outlined. Marcus signed with shaking hands, each stroke of the pen visible defeat. When he finished, Adrian took the document, folded it precisely, and handed it to one of his security team. You can go now. Catherine will drive you home. And Marcus? Adrian waited until Marcus met his eyes. If I hear that you've harassed any other woman the way you harassed Elena, this agreement becomes void. I'll make it my personal mission to ensure you face consequences for every violent act you've ever committed. Are we clear? Yes? Good. Get out. Catherine and another guard escorted Marcus from the room. Elena heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of a car engine starting in the alley below. And then he was gone, leaving only silence and the strange hollowness of victory that felt nothing like she'd imagined. Adrian sat in the chair Marcus had vacated, studying Elena's face. "How do you feel?" Elena considered the question. How did she feel? Not triumphant, not relieved, not even particularly safe. Just tired. So incredibly tired. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "Ask me in a week." "Fair enough." Adrian signaled to one of the remaining guards, who left discreetly. "For what it's worth, I think he'll comply. Men like Chen are fundamentally cowards. They attack when they feel powerful and retreat when they realize they're outmatched. And if he doesn't comply, then I keep my promises. All of them." Adrian's expression was serious. "But Elena, you should know what I did tonight, those threats. They weren't empty. I have that information, those connections. I would have destroyed his life without hesitation if he'd refused." "I know. Does that bother you?" Elena thought about it, about the violence of Adrian's threats versus the violence of Marcus's fists, about the choice between legal systems that moved too slowly and extra-legal solutions that worked immediately, about the cage Jessica had warned her about and whether its door was really unlocked. "It should bother me more than it does," she said finally, "but mostly I'm just grateful it's over." Not quite over yet. Chen could change his mind, decide my threats were bluffs, come back angrier than before. Adrian stood, offering his hand to help Elena up. "But we'll deal with that if it happens. For now, you should rest. Catherine will take you home." Home. The word caught Elena off guard because somehow, impossibly, the suite at the Meridian had started to feel like home. Not just a temporary refuge, but an actual place where she belonged. The realization was both comforting and terrifying. Over the following days, Elena waited for the other shoe to drop, for Marcus to violate the agreement, to resurface with new harassment tactics, to prove that Adrian's threats hadn't been enough. But her phone remained silent. No flowers arrived. No emails appeared in her inbox. Detective Martinez called on the fourth day with unexpected news. Marcus Chen withdrew his missing persons report and submitted a written statement that he had been mistaken about your situation. He also formally dropped his contestation of the protection order. Martinez sounded puzzled. "I don't know what happened, but whatever you did, it worked." Elena thought about the fear in Marcus's eyes, the defeat in his signature on Adrian's document. "I just made it clear that continuing to harass me wasn't worth the consequences." Well, whatever those consequences were, they were effective. You're free to move on with your life now, Miss Voss. No more looking over your shoulder. After the call ended, Elena stood at her windows and let herself cry. Not from sadness or fear, but from the sheer overwhelming relief of being free. Actually, truly free. No Marcus hunting her, no constant vigilance required, just the possibility of building a life on her own terms. Jessica's reaction to the news was more complicated. "I'm glad he's leaving you alone," she said when they met for coffee that weekend. "But Elena, what did this Adrian guy do to make that happen? Because Marcus doesn't seem like the type to just give up." Adrian had information Marcus didn't want made public. He made it clear that continuing to harass me would cost more than it was worth. Elena stirred her latte, avoiding Jessica's eyes. It was effective. "So now you're indebted to a man who uses blackmail and intimidation to solve problems. It wasn't like that, wasn't it?" Jessica leaned forward, voice intense. "Elena, I love you. I'm thrilled that you got away from Marcus, but I'm worried you've just traded one dangerous relationship for another. Adrian may not hit you, but he controls your housing, your income, your safety. That's still control." "It's different. I can leave anytime I want." "Can you? Really?" Jessica's expression was sad, not accusatory. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're dependent on Adrian for everything. What happens if you want to quit? Do you think he'll just let you walk away with everything you know about his business?" The question hit harder than Elena wanted to admit. Because Jessica was right. She knew things now. About Vincent Calabrese and his money laundering, about the guests at Adrian's events who operated in legal gray areas, about the way Adrian solved problems through intimidation and connections rather than official channels. She was complicit, and complicity created its own kind of cage. I don't know, Elena admitted, but I do know that right now I'm safer and more financially stable than I've been in years. Maybe that's not perfect freedom. Maybe it comes with strings attached, but it's better than where I was. Is it enough, though? Just being better than Marcus? Jessica reached across the table, gripping Elena's hand. You deserve more than that. You deserve actual independence, real autonomy, a life you build for yourself rather than one someone gives you. The words stayed with Elena for days, echoing through her mind during events and quiet evenings alone. She thought about the contract she'd signed, the salary she earned, the suite she lived in, about the skills she was developing, reading people, navigating elite social circles, understanding the unspoken rules of wealth and power, about who she was becoming in Adrian's world versus who she might be outside it. The answer arrived unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. Elena was reviewing notes from a recent event when her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Miss Voss, this is Margaret Chen from the Thornton Foundation. I'm calling because your name was recommended to us as someone with exceptional talent in event coordination and guest relations. Elena's heart jumped. Recommended by whom? Adrian Moretti, actually. He spoke very highly of your skills and suggested you might be interested in a position with our organization. We're a nonprofit focused on supporting survivors of domestic violence, and we're looking for someone to manage our annual gala and other fundraising events. It took Elena a moment to process what she was hearing. Adrian had recommended her for a job. A legitimate, independent job with a nonprofit organization. I'm very interested, she said carefully. Can you tell me more about the position? Margaret outlined the role. Full-time, $60,000 a year, benefits included, working with a team to coordinate events that raised money for shelters and support services. It was less money than what Adrian paid her, but it was real, it was meaningful, and most importantly, it was entirely separate from his world. It was a door out of the cage. We'd love to interview you if you're interested, Margaret continued. Perhaps next week? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. After hanging up, Elena sat in stunned silence. Adrian had done this, created an exit option for her without being asked, without fanfare, without demanding gratitude. It was the opposite of everything Marcus had ever done, the opposite of the control she'd feared Adrian might eventually exert. It was freedom offered freely. She found Adrian in his office that evening, working through paperwork with his usual focused intensity. He looked up when she entered, something questioning in his expression. The Thornton Foundation called me today, Elena said without preamble. Did they? Adrian's tone was carefully neutral. And you recommended me for their events position. Why? Adrian set down his pen, leaning back in his chair. Because you're good at what you do, and they need someone with your skills. Also because I thought you might want options. Options? Yes. Options. He met her eyes directly. Elena, you're not a prisoner here. You never were. I hired you because you had skills I needed, and I could offer you resources you needed. That was the deal. But deals can change. Circumstances can evolve. If you want to build a career in legitimate nonprofit work, you should have that opportunity. Even though it means losing me as an employee? Even though. A slight smile. You've more than earned your salary over these past few weeks. You identified problems I wouldn't have caught, navigated difficult social situations with grace, and proved you can survive in my world without losing yourself. That's worth something. Worth ensuring you have choices about what comes next. Elena felt tears prickling her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll interview with Thornton, see if it's a good fit. If it is, take the job with my blessing and an excellent reference letter. If it's not, your position here remains available for as long as you want it. Adrian paused. But Elena, whatever you decide, the suite is yours for another 6 months minimum, paid in full. You don't have to worry about housing while you figure out your next steps. The generosity of it was staggering. Elena had expected many things from Adrian: calculated manipulation, strategic generosity, the slow tightening of control disguised as care. She hadn't expected actual, genuine concern for her well-being independent of what she could provide him. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because I remember what it's like to have no options, to feel trapped by circumstances and desperate enough to make dangerous choices. Adrian's expression softened. I offered you a way out of one cage. I'm not interested in building you another one. That night, Elena called Jessica and told her everything. The job offer, Adrian's recommendation, the housing he'd promised regardless of whether she continued working for him. Holy shit, Jessica breathed. Elena, that's incredible. I mean, I did not see that coming. Neither did I. So what are you going to do? Elena thought about it, about the Thornton Foundation and meaningful work that directly helped women like her, about the skills she'd developed in Adrian's world and how they might translate to something both legitimate and fulfilling, about the freedom to choose without financial desperation driving every decision. I'm going to interview with Thornton, she said, see if it's the right fit. But Jessica, even if I take that job, I think I want to stay connected to Adrian's world in some way. Maybe as a consultant, maybe just as someone who occasionally helps out at events. Because as complicated as it is, I've learned things there. About power, about confidence, about navigating spaces that used to terrify me. Just promise me you'll be careful, that you won't let gratitude turn into obligation. I promise. The interview with Thornton went better than Elena could have hoped. Margaret and her team were passionate, professional, and deeply committed to their mission. The position would involve coordinating 4 major events per year, managing vendor relationships, and working directly with survivors to ensure the foundation's work actually served their needs. It was perfect. Elena accepted the job on the spot, start date in 2 weeks. When she told Adrian, he smiled with what looked like genuine pride. Congratulations, they're lucky to have you. I couldn't have gotten this without you. The skills, the confidence, the recommendation. You had the foundation already. I just gave you a space to rebuild. Adrian stood, offering his hand for a formal shake. It's been a pleasure working with you, Miss Voss. And if you ever need anything, reference, advice, someone to make a problem disappear, you know where to find me. Elena took his hand, surprised by how much she'd missed this. The events, the observation, the strange thrill of navigating dangerous spaces with Adrian's protection. But she'd missed the cage more than she'd missed the safety it provided. Thank you, she said, for everything. For seeing potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. For protecting me when I needed it. For letting me go when I was ready. That's what freedom is, Adrian said quietly. Knowing you can leave and choosing to stay, or choosing to go and knowing you're welcome to return. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of transition. Elena worked her final events with Adrian, training a replacement he'd hired, a young woman named Sarah who reminded Elena painfully of herself just a few weeks earlier, running from something she couldn't name yet. Elena made sure Sarah knew about the resources available, the skills she'd need, the ways to maintain independence even while accepting Adrian's help, paying forward the gift she'd been given. On her last day as Adrian's employee, Elena packed up her things from the suite, not moving out since Adrian had insisted she stay rent-free for 6 months, but preparing for the psychological shift from dependent to independent. Jessica helped, providing running commentary and occasional tears. I can't believe how much has changed in just a month, Jessica said, wrapping a wine glass in newspaper. You went from terrified and broke to employed and safe. It's like watching someone transform. I'm still terrified sometimes, Elena admitted. Still have nightmares about Marcus. Still worry that this is all too good to be true and something will collapse. But you're handling it. Building something real. Jessica hugged her fiercely. I'm so proud of you, Elena. So proud. Elena's first day at the Thornton Foundation felt like stepping into a parallel universe. The office was small, crowded with donated furniture and whiteboards covered in fundraising goals. Her coworkers were earnest and overworked, fueled by coffee and genuine commitment to their cause. It was nothing like Adrian's sleek, controlled world. It was perfect. Margaret introduced Elena to the team, walked her through current projects, and left her with a stack of files about the upcoming winter gala. As Elena dove into the work, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Pure, uncomplicated purpose. This mattered. Not in the abstract way Adrian's events had mattered, where success meant protecting criminal enterprises from scrutiny, but in concrete, measurable ways. Every dollar they raised meant shelter beds for women fleeing violence, legal services, counseling, job training, everything Elena had needed when she left Marcus and couldn't access through official channels. She could do this. More than that, she could excel at it. 3 months into her new job, Elena received a text from an unknown number. Her stomach clenched instinctively before she read the message. Saw the article about Thornton's record-breaking gala. Well done. You found your calling. A.M. Adrian, reaching out just enough to let her know he was watching, proud, available if needed, but not demanding, not controlling, not trying to pull her back into his orbit. Exactly the kind of connection Elena could maintain safely. She typed back, "Thank you for everything." His response came immediately. "You earned it. The suite is yours for another 3 months if you need it. After that, you're on your own, as it should be." Elena smiled at her phone, then tucked it away and returned to work. 6 months after leaving Marcus, Elena signed the lease on her own apartment, a small one-bedroom in Brooklyn with good light and neighbors who seemed friendly but not intrusive. It wasn't the Meridian's luxury, but it was hers, paid for with money she'd earned doing meaningful work. Jessica helped her move in, along with 2 other friends Elena had slowly reconnected with over the months. They painted walls, assembled furniture from IKEA, and christened the space with cheap wine and laughter. "To new beginnings," Jessica toasted, raising her glass. "To freedom," Elena added. And finally, impossibly, she meant it. Marcus became a ghost, a memory that occasionally surfaced in nightmares or moments of unexpected fear, but no longer a present threat. Detective Martinez called once to inform her that Marcus had moved to Boston for a new job, effectively removing himself from her sphere entirely. Whether that was genuine geographic coincidence or the result of Adrian's continued influence, Elena didn't ask. Some answers were better left unknown. Adrian she saw occasionally, at charity events where their professional spheres overlapped. They maintained cordial distance, a polite conversation here, a professional collaboration there. He never asked her to return to his employment, and she never felt obligated to offer. It was the healthiest relationship with a man Elena had experienced in years. On the 1-year anniversary of the night she'd fled to the Meridian, Elena stood on her apartment's small balcony and looked out at the Brooklyn skyline. She thought about the woman who'd stumbled through the rain with $300 and terror in her heart, about the choices that had followed, some brave, some desperate, all leading inexorably to this moment. She'd survived. More than that, she'd transformed, turned trauma into strength, dependence into autonomy, victimhood into advocacy. Her phone buzzed with a message from the Thornton Foundation's director. "Board approved your proposal. You're now our Director of Events and Survivor Services. Congratulations, you've earned it." Elena read the message 3 times, letting the reality sink in. Director. A title she'd earned through skill and dedication, not given as charity or extracted as payment for enduring abuse. Hers. She looked down at the street below, watching people move through their evening routines, coming home from work, meeting friends, living the ordinary lives that had once seemed impossibly out of reach. Now she was one of them, just another woman with her own apartment and meaningful work and the freedom to build whatever future she chose. The cage was gone, not because someone had unlocked it, but because Elena had learned to pick the lock herself. And standing here on her balcony, overlooking a city that no longer felt threatening but full of possibility, Elena Voss finally allowed herself to believe something she'd thought lost forever. She was going to be okay, more than okay. She was going to thrive. The end.